Good afternoon. It's coming up to 1 minute past 3. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Now, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has offered his condolences to the families of those killed in India following a train crash where at least 288 people died and 850 were injured. The death toll makes it the country's deadliest rail incident in more than 2 decades. The army has been deployed to help evacuate the injured, with an extensive search and rescue operation ongoing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the site in Odisha state. Philip Schofield says he fears being spat on in the street after it was revealed that he'd had an affair with a much younger colleague whilst presenting This Morning. In a new interview with The Sun, he admitted he's afraid to leave his house after resigning from ITV and being dropped by his talent agency. Schofield says he's getting by hour with support from his daughters and friends. Police have detained 2 protesters at the Epsom Derby after they attempted to run onto the course. It follows the arrest of 19 people on suspicion of conspiracy to commit public nuisance. Earlier, Animal Rising threatened to cancel or severely delay the horse racing event. However, it went ahead as planned. They're accusing Surrey Police of abusing their powers. We'll bring more on this story in just a moment. Well, rail passengers are experiencing their 3rd day of major disruption this week as members of the ASLEF union go on strike. Workers across 15 train companies have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay and conditions. ASLEF, which represents 96% of train drivers, warn it's unlikely any services will be running. The disruption is affecting people attending the FA Cup final at Wembley and, of course, the Epsom Derby Festival. Well, diesel prices fell by a record of almost 12 pence last month. That's the biggest drop for over 2 decades. The RAC says the average price of diesel went from 158.9 pence to 147 in May. That's the 7th consecutive month in which UK pump prices have fallen, and it reduced the cost of filling up a typical family car by £6.50. Petrol prices also fell by 3 pence last month. Scotland's First Minister says there has never been a more important time for the country to become independent. Humza Yousaf claims that Westminster is failing to support people in Scotland during the cost of living crisis. Now, he says SNPs would build an economy that puts working families first. The First Minister is also accusing Labour of sitting on their hands while Tories undermine the Scottish government. President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Ukraine is ready to launch its counter-offensive against Russia. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Zelensky said he believes Ukraine will succeed in recapturing Russian-occupied territory, but he doesn't know how long that will take. Kyiv previously said it needed more Western armoured vehicles before the fight back could begin. Russia currently holds swathes of Ukrainian territory in the east, south and southeast of the country. A UK ticket holder won more than £110 million in last night's Euro Millions jackpot. The unnamed winner is now richer than footballer Harry Kane, actor Daniel Radcliffe and singer Dua Lipa. That's according to the Sunday Times Rich List. Players are being urged to check if they could be the lucky winner. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
So welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time to muck the week. Now, of course, the COVID inquiry is underway. A new dad, Boris Johnson's been jogging after Baroness Hallett requested his WhatsApp messages from both his phones. Interestingly, Boris is extremely willing. I mean, one of his phones was switched off, the one with all the juicy bits of gossip, due to a security breach, and Boris seems more than ready to hand this over, despite the government's reluctance. I wonder what he's got on that phone. Let's be honest here. Boris has nothing to lose, really. He's making a fortune in speeches. I'm hoping he writes a book soon. Who needs politics? Is this COVID stuff just dragging on a bit? Do you actually think it's relevant for an inquiry? Eyes are still on Philip Schofield as well, his crocodile tears. Yes, I get that he feels terrible now. His behaviour has been outed. But people aren't turning on him because he's gay, which is what he suggested. It's because of his behaviour. Credit to him that he acknowledges he behaved badly. but it's got nothing to do with his sexuality. I actually think it would have been worse if it had been a young girl he'd had the affair with. And as for ITV, well, they've got a lot to answer for, really. I can assure you, if I treated people badly here, I'd be out on my ear faster than you can say Jack Robinson. And the Labour Party must be loving all this distraction. But let's shine the spotlight on Geraint Davies, a Labour MP who's been accused of multiple incidents of inappropriate behaviour towards junior female colleagues. 5 women said that he subjected them to unwanted sexual attention, both physical and verbal, after coming into contact with him at work. And some of the incidents allegedly took place in the parliamentary estate, sometimes in bars or after late-night votes. One of the women apparently targeted was just 19 years old, which obviously is legal, but it's quite young, isn't it? Geraint said that he didn't recognise the allegations, adding, "If I'd inadvertently caused offence to anyone, then I'm naturally sorry." The Labour Party suspended him, but can you imagine if this were the Tory party? They'd be on it like a rash. The established media would have a field day. Then, of course, there's Harry and Meghan. Yes, they said they've promised us that they now wish to remain behind the camera, so no more podcasts, no more interviews like the one they did with Oprah, no more book deals, no more spare us, for God's sake. They have promised, I don't think they can keep their promise. I mean, Harry's still got this litigious business going on Tuesday. We'll all be watching that avidly. So he'll be back in front of the camera before we know it. And finally, Sleepy Joe has had another fall. Who are we kidding? This man is ill. I mean, he can't run, pardon the pun, another term. It's been a mucky old week. So before we get stuck into the debate over the next hour, let me introduce you to my panel. Joining me today, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. On the way, comedian Francis Foster will be joining me to discuss the new top stories this week, from Philip Schofield, the Labour MP being suspended, and the fallout from the COVID inquiry. Then, after Mock the Week, I'll be taking on Just Stop Oil and Animal Rising as they aim to disrupt both the FA Cup final and the Epsom derby in climate control, as arrests have already been made in the build-up to these 2 huge sporting events. And we are seeing the rise of machines. Yes, we are. I'll be speaking to Philip Ingren about how AI simulation went very wrong and terminated its own operator. Not really, not in real life, but it's a bit scary. It's a bit like the Terminator. You won't want to miss that. Then, for Political Spotlight, I'll be speaking to former First Minister of Northern Ireland and now GB News presenter Arlene Foster, discussing her amazing political journey and career. That's on the way in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Stay tuned for my Harry and Meghan Mogul monologue. You're going to enjoy that. And we're going to be discussing narcissism later on. Get in touch. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So joining me now, it's time to Mock the Week with comedian Francis Foster. Francis, welcome. Nice to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Nana.
Oh, this week's been quite grubby, hasn't it, really?
It has. It's always grubby, but that's why we're here. We love it.
Now, Boris Johnson, people seem to have forgotten that he's actually just become a dad.
Yes.
There's going to be quite a busy week for him, in a mucky old week, in very different meaning for that. But what do you think? This COVID inquiry, I mean, do you feel that we need to be sort of going into it again? Do we really need this inquiry?
Well, I'm really looking forward to Boris's messages, because you know they're going to be absolutely filthy and contain more X-rated content than the entire contents of the internet.
Do you think?
Yeah, of course. How many kids does Boris have now?
I don't know. I don't think he knows.
No, of course he doesn't. You know, that's partly why we liked him. Do you know what I mean? A fertile man. That's what you want as Prime Minister.
Well, because he keeps fit, he keeps jogging, he keeps running. He's not running away from Carrie, seriously.
No, he's not.
No,
Maybe some of his other responsibilities, but not Carrie for the moment.
Exactly, for now. But, I mean, if we look at it, right,
yeah,
he hasn't really got that much to lose, has he? Because even if they find stuff, they want to take him down. It's quite obvious. They've got that ridiculous kangaroo court still going on, which I think they should just scrap. But the COVID inquiry, it's not going to be finished until 2028. It'll be lessons will be learned and nothing will be learned.
Well, nothing is going to be learned. With every inquiry that has ever happened since the dawn of time, the main rule is it's going to take about 20 years longer than it needs to. It's going to cost far more than it needs to. And ultimately, by the time the results are released, nobody's going to care. And that's the plan. Nobody will care, because by 2028, they'll all be off doing something else, and in fact, the country will just be worse.
And it's going to cost the taxpayer a fortune as well. It's really
Of course, but let's be fair. If there's one thing we've got an abundance of at the moment in this country, Nana, it is money.
It is money, yeah.
Let's just print some more money.
Let's get more money, yay!
Yay.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? I mean, look, I don't know. I think they need to... I understand people died during COVID, but, you know, I mean... And I think there's a lot of hindsight going on. So people are saying, well, we knew age... I mean, I heard Ben Habib saying, oh, we knew ages ago that the virus wasn't that bad. I didn't.
No one knew.
Who knew? We didn't know. I don't believe that for a minute. And actually, the virus changed. It became weaker. It was quite bad at the beginning, and it changed.
It did. You could say it transitioned.
It
Nana.
transitioned.
Yeah, it did. It became weaker and it became less virulent. So as a result of that, we now see COVID as just something to live with. But I think people forget that at the start, it actually was scary.
It was really scary. It was like 28 Days Later. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have.
It's a great movie.
And probably the only way I'm ever going to be able to get on the property ladder, Nana, is if we have a 28 Days Later situation.
What about Philip Schofield? Let's talk about him. He did his crying. Look, I understand we need to be careful because obviously, you know, he is a one man. I mean, Boris took a lot of stick as well. So you know, there's a lot of sympathy for Philip, but there wasn't much for Boris, which I don't really get.
Yeah.
The pressure was worse. But he is a broken man, frankly. But then he tried to blame it on being gay.
Well, this is it. Normally, and this what Philip is, he's a visionary. Because if you cheat on your wife of 26 years and you don't want to get blamed for it, what you do is you go in a studio, right, which if I, not that I will, because I'm a good man, I'm not going to cheat on my partner, but if I did, I'm going to go on that sofa, have a little cry and say I'm gay and get you all to come and hug me.
You see, and I do understand, because Caroline Flack's mother came on and said, look, you've got to be careful piling on people, and that is true. That is very true.
Yeah.
And I think ITV have got a lot of responsibility on this as well. I mean, if I behaved like that, and I hear that he wasn't particularly nice to people, there was a nasty culture in ITV, not just him, Holly and a lot of the others behaving in a not pleasant manner, I would be out on my own. My bosses here at GBNews, we don't tolerate that.
Well, exactly. But the problem is when people become so powerful, and we've seen it in the past, you know, with people like Savile, etc., etc. Not comparing Schofield to Savile, can we just make that clear? But the problem is that they've been there for so long, they've become so powerful that people think that actually these are the reason why this show is successful, but they're not. You know, Gary Lineker is not the reason Match of the Day is successful. Match of the Day is successful because people want to watch a football. What's the programme called that he presents?
This Morning.
This Morning is successful because people are unemployed.
But it should be yesterday's morning. Yesterday morning.
Yeah.
The other morning. Not this morning, but Holly's coming back. She's going to be back on the sofa.
Yes.
That's what they're saying.
Does it? I mean, look, nobody watches that. And if you do watch it, it's because, let's be fair, you're at rock bottom. Why are you not working? Why are you watching This Morning? I've forgotten the name of it.
No, it was that morning, another morning, some other morning.
Yeah, some morning.
Another day.
Yeah.
What about Geraint Davis? Because whilst all this has been going on, all this focus on Philip Schofield, this focus on the whole COVID inquiry, then Prince Harry's going to be talking about it, whatever. People have sort of lost not looking at the Labour Party.
Well, this is it. And what you have to say is this behaviour, he's just been accused of it. We don't know if he's actually done it. But what you have to say is this behaviour is not... This isn't the behaviour of a Labour MP. This is a behaviour of an ITV TV presenter.
No, don't say that. You can't say... Well,
yes.
Although you could draw the parallels.
Yeah, you could draw or a BBC TV presenter
but
then.
Why have we ignored this? We've got like a laser focus on Schofield, but then we've got like an MP who is apparently behaving badly. He's apologised, in fact, saying if he's upset anybody, he's sorry. So he's not denying that he may have inadvertently, as he said, inadvertently were his words, caused upset. So he's not denying it. And yet we're not even looking at him. We don't really care.
Because everyone kind of expects our MPs to be truly appalling, terrible people. That's what we expect. Do you remember when we used to say, oh, you know, they're a member of Parliament, they're an upstanding member of society now? I'll be honest with you, it's got to the point now where I'm like, oh, well, at least they weren't underage.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're all looking at. The youngest
a sigh of relief, Nana.
Yeah, the youngest one was 19. That's fair enough. They're old enough. But really, again, it could be seen as some sort of abusive.
Unwise but not illegal,
Unwise, good word.
To quote a great man.
Absolutely. And then Harry and Meghan, they've said they are not going to appear in front of the camera.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. That's like an alcoholic saying he's not going to have another drink, isn't it? we can't believe... I don't believe this. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I feel sorry for Harry. This is what happens when you marry a woman who is out of your league, both looks and intellectually. She runs rings around him. He can't help it. He is out of his depth. It's like as a boxer, when you go up a couple of divisions and then you realise, actually, I'm getting massacred here.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening every day. At first, it was enjoyable, but now...
And now it's just like repeated blows.
Yeah, repeated blows. He's like, oh,
like
I can't do
Balboa.
anything. Where's my dad? No, he doesn't want to talk to you anymore, mate. So...
No, that's really sad. I actually feel very sorry for Harry and even Meghan to a degree, because it's almost like they don't realise how damaging their behaviour is, and they don't understand the sort of ricochet. When you behave like that, people don't want to take you in. Like, if you're horrible to your own family...
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be horrible to your own family, you're not going to be nice to me.
Exactly. And this also as well, if you see somebody selling family secrets, you're like, I can't really trust you.
No.
You can't trust them.
You can't trust it.
You can't trust you can't trust them. So it's looked really bad for Harry. There was at one point where he was the most popular one. We liked him. We realised he wasn't that bright. No one's perfect. But we're like, he's a good guy. He's doing his best. And then he's just... It's all gone wrong, sadly. Moral of the story, pick somebody who is your own level.
Or maybe slightly beneath that.
No, slightly beneath,
Maybe
absolutely.
And finally, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. I feel bad for this man. He shouldn't be running the country. Well, he's not, is he, frankly?
No.
But somebody's pulling the strings, but we don't know who.
Yeah, literally. Because sometimes when he walks, he looks like he's got strings. It's sometimes when he talks, he doesn't even talk, he scats. Like jazz singers, like... And God, how is this man the leader of the free world? It's a wonderful world. I'm like, are you a politician or are you Louis Armstrong? What are you?
Oh, it's terrible. But people act like they know what he's saying. They're going as if they understand. They're clapping him at the end. I'm like, is it me? Or this man, he's not in control of this. He's old. He may have dementia, which is very sad.
Yes.
Why on earth is he the head of the party and running the country?
Well, this is quite literally the billion-dollar question. No one knows. In a country of over 320 million, with some of the greatest minds in the world and the universities, etc., you had Joe Biden. And you think to yourself, this is a sign that the political system, quite frankly, isn't fit for purpose.
Well, he certainly isn't. Listen,
No.
Francis, it's been a pleasure as ever. When are you next on Headliners?
I'll be on soon. Just, follow me at Francis J. Foster and you'll be able to see. And also my wonderful show, Trigonometry, which is on YouTube and all the podcasts.
Lovely. Francis Foster, thank you so much for mucking the week with me. Thank you so much. That is, of course, Francis Foster. It's been a mucky old week. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, I'll be delving into the world of AI as hundreds of tech leaders have called for the world to treat AI as danger on par with pandemics and nuclear war. But next up, it's time for climate control, and I'll be asking, are you fed up with eco-warriors disrupting events as 2 people have been arrested trying to run onto the racecourse? I'll be speaking to both Just Stop Oil and Animal Rising. That's on the way, and much more.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 22 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. I was talking about Boris and the COVID inquiry. We were mucking the week. And Leon says this is not a government. It's a mishmash of people that just haven't been sacked. We've got a Prime Minister who's an absolute coward and disgusting in every direction. We've got an ex-Prime Minister who's a liar. And we've got Prime Ministers no one voted for. I think that sums it up, really. Alan says he's definitely hiding something. Sunak wants transparency. Well, this is his chance. Back says if there's nothing to hide, then allow the investigation. Team full access. Yeah, but Boris has, actually. That's the thing. It's the government that don't want it, which I wonder why. Isn't that interesting? But stay tuned, because, of course, it's time for climate control. It's the second day of the Epsom Derby Horse Racing Festival. And as things stand, 19 members of Animal Rising have been arrested for planning to disrupt the event, with a further 2 detained after running onto the track. Now, one man managed to jump the fence before being tackled, a bit like a horse, jumping the fence, and then handcuffed by police on the racecourse, whilst the crowd jeered and booed. Minutes later, a woman attempted to climb the fence, but she was pulled to the floor by police. And observers described the situation as ludicrous and absolute insanity, whilst others thanked police for putting a stop to the protests. Well, I can say that I'm now joined by our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's at the Epsom Downs racecourse. Paul, talk to me about the scenes that occurred a few moments ago.
Yeah, so this was about a minute into the race, which went off on time, 1:30. They were on the far side of the track from the grandstand. That's where all the races start. And then about 30 seconds to a minute into the race, there was a lot of booing by the finish line on the near side, by the grandstand. You could see one man being carried away. He managed to make it into the middle of the track. He was in civilian clothing. He wasn't wearing any kind of campaign T-shirts, no T-shirts that said Animal Rising on them, but he made his way into the track. He was there for a few seconds, and then he was taken away by 4 or 5 stewards to cheers from the crowd. We've confirmed in the last few minutes, actually, from Animal Rising themselves, that he was one of their protesters. There was another arrest made, a woman who was trying to climb the fence to enter the race area as well. The horses were nowhere near, no one was hurt, and they were taken away. So one of the aims of Animal Rising was to either cancel or delay the start of the race. That didn't happen, but speaking to them in the last few minutes, they've told me that, look, they've at least managed to publicise what they're calling for, which is, they think that horse racing is a cruel sport. They point to the use of whips, they point to the use of jumps, they point to the fatality rate amongst horses, and they say that for that reason the sport needs to be banned. And that, OK, they didn't manage to cancel or delay the start of the race today, but they've managed to amplify the volume of the conversation, and that will continue with other sports events. And just quickly before I let you go, we have had a response from the Jockey Club. They're the people that own Epsom Racecourse. In the last few minutes, they've said this reckless and illegal behaviour is a breach of the High Court injunction, which they won last week. They'll be seeking to enforce that. There's potentially fines, potential imprisonment through that legal route. We utterly condemn their deplorable and mindless actions today. The race was able able to take place on time today is testament to the determination of everyone to stage what they call one of British sport's most iconic and loved events. So generally speaking, it has passed off today so far without hitch, although there are still a few races to take place. So we haven't had the end of the racing action today, but certainly the most prestigious race, the Derby, is over.
Thank you, Paul. That's Paul Hawkins. He's our national reporter. Well, joining me now is Lewis Perry, director of Car 26, Sean Iris from Just Stop Oil, and Alex Lockwood from Animal Rising. Alex, I'm going to come to you first. Right, so as you wanted to highlight the cause of the animals, talk to me about why this was a good event for you to be doing this at.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. A horse dies every other day in horse racing in the UK, and we know that. And we know that actually after we disrupted the Grand National, 54% of the general public in Britain understand that it's, voted and said, this is a cruel race. We want this industry to consider what it's doing. Our aim is to shine a spotlight on all of these harms done to animals, whether we use them for food, whether we use them for fun, in sport, or wherever we use them. Because actually, if we can change our relationship with animals in this country right now, it's really important for us in terms of our climate and nature crisis that we're facing. So for us, really, really happy today that no horses were harmed, because we know just on Tuesday this week, Sweet Run died at Lingfield on the flat. Horses die all the time, so we're trying to put an end to that.
I hear you, but they do die all the time. And I mean, you could have somebody running a marathon and they could die at the end of it, Lois.
Yeah, I mean, are you a vegan as well?
Yes, I'm a vegan,
you are. So you don't believe that we should be eating meat or having milk or anything like that either? That goes with the whole package of your belief system?
Yes, because we're in a situation now where we're exploiting and using animals and we don't need to. And actually that exploitation leads to a great amount of harm for our nature, biodiversity.
We've had dominion over the animals. It's actually in the Old Testament that human beings have dominion over the animals and that we look after them and that they look after us. And, it's a contract between us. I really do think...
in the Old Testament.
Pardon?
You have dominion over the animals. You were to go forth and multiply. You were to take care of the animals. We did not start eating the animals until after the flood, and we sinned. Part of the sin was that we got to, from the fruit of your labour, from the sweat of your brow. Before, when Adam and Eve, when the Bible was perfect, if you believe in it, we were vegan.
Yeah, but we may be vegan, but that doesn't mean that it should then be pushed onto everybody else.
No.
I mean, I have an autoimmune condition. I can't just eat pulses and things like that. There are people who can't eat nuts. I don't think that your ideology is realistic when it comes to veganism, and you actually have to be very understanding and knowledgeable about food to make sure that you don't end up doing yourself some damage.
Do you know what the definition of veganism is?
Well, you give it to us. Go on. So
we're practical and possible to seek to remove all exploitation and cruelty from animals. So that's where possible. So if you cannot, for whatever reason, and you have to survive, you are still vegan if you are doing it because you have to survive.
OK, but most vegan food and most of that kind of food, non-animal product food, is highly, highly processed, unless you're just eating literally an apple or a banana or something like that. There's so many chemicals in vegan food.
Yep, go on.
In the UK, I wrote a massive report on this, actually, for the Vegan Society, so I've done my research. We've got one of the worst diets in Europe, in the world, actually, in the UK. 50% of our diet is highly processed, actually.
Well, it depends what you eat. My diet is very good, so I don't eat that.
But 50% of the diet for most people in this country is really unhealthy. But what we're saying is that we don't need to exploit and harm animals anymore. We can eat really healthy, whole food, plant-based diets,
meat.
and cheaply as well, nutritionally. We can do that. I grew up as a meat eater. My granddad used to take me to the butchers, and that, so I grew up that way. So I understand the attachment to it. But now is a time.
It's not an attachment. People should be able to do what they want. They should be able to drive cars. They should be able to heat their homes, and they should be able to eat meat and drink.
And that's why we're here,
milk.
raising attention to have the conversation. And I think that conversation is really important across the great general public in this country. We have to have a conversation about the way that we treat animals.
Well, let's move on to let's open the climate discussion to Just Stop Oil as well, because you guys are... is there going to be any action on the football pitches? Manchester City and Manchester United are playing today, the FA Cup final. Are they going to be storming the pitch?
Couldn't possibly say. I'm here, so I don't know.
No, you might not be there, but you might know if they're going to. Are they planning to do that today?
So we are Just Stop Oil. We are demanding that the UK government end all new fossil fuel licences. We are willing to do any cultural actions in order to raise the profile of that issue. So I can't say what we would or wouldn't target. That's not the decision that I make.
But fossil fuels are naturally occurring, right, in the environment. So and as I understood it, there were the bones and things and minerals and so on. So
and they're constantly rejuvenating as well.
So I get it. What's the problem with us using what there is that we already have rather than bring it to waste?
So I'm actually glad you asked it in that way, because you've done it much better than most reporters. So Just Stop Oil is actually asking that the UK government end new fossil fuel licences.
We
recognise during a transitional period that we will continue to have to use it. Although the NHS is collapsing under the Tories, it would collapse faster if we stopped all oil immediately. We recognise that there needs to be a transition, but we need to work towards that. At the moment, fossil fuels are killing us. You will not be able to go to a nail beautician's and get your nails done if we are living in a climate crisis.
Well, no, that's the least of my worries. I don't do that. I tell you what I need the fossil fuels for, things like making concrete, things like actually even making...
Everything.
Even making the wind turbines, even making things like fertiliser to actually have the vegan diet that you're talking about. Fossil fuels are implicated in many things. I don't think... What is your plan? Once we've stopped that, what are we going to use instead?
So you're absolutely right. At the moment, fossil fuels are integral to the global society as we are. We're talking about moving away from that. There is solutions. There has been solutions for decades.
Like what? Sorry.
So we have got a variety of energy.
Like what?
So wind turbines, we've got...
Yeah, they don't work. Yeah, go on.
They're not going to make concrete. How are you going to make the turbine without the fossil
fuels? So you can make concrete without fossil fuels.
Not really.
So you can make hemp-based concrete. Not to the current volume, as you say.
Not to the volume. Listen, I've studied this. I know.
If you want to talk to yourself, that's absolutely fine. But let me actually... If you're going to ask me a question, let me answer it.
No, I have let you answer it. So I'm asking you. I ask you.
So concrete is currently made in the way it is because of the fossil fuel industry and because of the dependency that we have on the fossil fuel industry. It's not because it's the cheapest. It's not because it's the fastest. It's not because it's the most efficient. It's because it is the most massively available due to the overarching of the fossil fuel industry, which is taking millions out of the economy as we spend millions during a cost of living crisis.
You know, absolutely everything you're saying is complete nonsense, don't you? Everything you're wearing, everything in this room, in fact, everything in your life and in your family's life is dependent on oil. Absolutely everything, from when you go into hospital, from the plastics, from absolutely everything. But it's so interesting that you talk about transitions and no new oil and gas exploration, because your main funder is the Getty family, who own a lot of the oil and gas resources. And, of course, they wouldn't want any new oil and gas, would they? Because it pushes the price of their oil and gas up. How can you sit there, funded by oil, doing a thing called Just Stop Oil?
So, do a little bit more research. So, Aileen Getty, who's you're referring to,
don't be patronising.
is a disowned great-granddaughter of an oil industry.
I don't believe that.
So, she does not have any investments currently. She's not part of it. So, that's like me saying, I've got Norman ancestry, ancient Norman, that I'm still a prince.
Well, but listen, but it's not that far back. And let's be honest, the reason why she's where she is with the name she is because of fossil fuels. That's the point that we're making here. So literally, as Lois said, you've just confirmed that literally everything that we have is from fossil fuels, even Just Stop Oil. This is news. Well, I've got to wrap up because we've got the news. I would love to talk to you.
You can join us every Saturday, midday in Parliament Square, and for till 10 a.m. you can donate lots of money. That will be tripled.
Excuse me. My show, at least be polite. All right, so look, I look forward to us doing this again. We'll have a longer discussion on it. But if you just tuned in, welcome aboard. That, of course, was Lois Perry from Car 26, Sean Irish from Just Stop Oil, and Alex Lockwood from Animal Rising. Right, so you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, I'll be delving into the world of AI as hundreds of tech leaders have called for the world to treat AI as a danger, on a par with pandemics and nuclear war. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
34 minutes past 3. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has offered his condolences to the families of those killed in India following a train crash where at least 288 people died and 850 were injured. The death toll makes it the country's deadliest rail incident in more than 2 decades. The army has been deployed to help evacuate the injured, with an extensive search and rescue operation ongoing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the site in Odisha State. The Epsom Jockey Club has praised the swift and decisive action of police after they detained 2 protesters at the Epsom Derby as they attempted to run onto the course. In total, 31 protesters have been arrested for attempting to disrupt the event, with 12 arrests made at the grounds. Animal Rising had threatened to cancel or severely delay the horse racing event. However, it went ahead as planned. They've accused Surrey Police of abusing their powers. Rail passengers are experiencing their third day of major disruption this week as members of the ASLEF union go on strike. Workers across 15 train companies have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay and conditions. The disruption has been affecting people planning to attend the FA Cup final at Wembley and, of course, the Epsom Derby. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to launch its counter-offensive against Russia. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Zelensky said he believes that Ukraine will succeed in recapturing Russian-occupied territory, but does not know how long that could take. Kyiv previously said it needed more Western armoured vehicles before the fight back could begin. You can get more on all of these stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Let's get back to Nana now.
Thank you, Ray. If you just joined me, it's just coming up to 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, coming up on the show, should we be afraid of an AI takeover? We'll be discussing that in just a moment.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 40 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, this is an incredible innovation. I had to share this story with you. I love all health stories. And this is one that's actually been designed by British people. This is incredible. It's a British-designed analysis machine capable of curing liver failure, and it could be rolled out in the NHS hospitals within 3 years, I know. Now, this device, which was developed by researchers from University College London, that's UCL, it filters toxins from the blood of people with liver failure, thus allowing the liver time to regenerate itself. Now, the liver is one of the most forgiving organs, so it's able to regenerate itself, unlike many of the others. And it's hoped that if and when this machine is rolled out, it will greatly increase survival rates for liver failure and reduce the demand for liver transplants, which is quite incredible. So let's speak to Rajiv Jalan. He's a professor of hepatology at the University College London. Wow, that's amazing. Isn't it incredible? Wow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. Talk to me about this machine and also who could it help?
So, look, this machine is designed to take out the nasty substances that accumulate when your liver does not work. And so, therefore, this should be useful for patients with liver failure who have nearly 30% of chances of dying within 28 days of hospitalization. So therefore, it targets nearly, I think, about 1.5 million people around the world.
Well, that is quite incredible. And as I understood it, the person who actually created this machine spent years and years coming to this. And is it an adaptation of a kidney dialysis machine, or is that how it works? Is it in a similar way as that?
Yeah, so in kidney dialysis, kidneys are simple because they take out water-soluble substances. That's what a kidney dialysis machine does. But liver is this amazing factory that controls the function of all the organ systems in the body. It is a metabolic, it's a metabolic genius. It sort of takes everything, organizes the immune responses, and also controls the function of each organ of your body. So for instance, when the liver fails, all the organs in the body fail. And so therefore, we understood why these organs are failing, why the liver is not regenerating. And what this machine does is to take all these nasty substances out so that these organs can recover and the liver can regenerate.
It's quite incredible that it can regenerate. I wish teeth would do the same thing. Crocodiles can regenerate new teeth, you know that? They can keep making teeth. Yes. If we could make more teeth, I'd be so happy. But speaking of this, though, so somebody with liver failure, this could help. What about things like liver cancer and stuff like that? Could parts of the cancer be taken out and then you could allow the liver to regenerate healthy cells? Yeah?
Absolutely right. So,
wow.
You could take out more of the liver if there's liver cancer. But of course, this could be used in people with severe sepsis.
All right.
It could be used in people getting serious chemotherapy, which damages the liver and produces multi-organ failure. So any syndrome that's associated with cytokine storm, and you might remember this word from the COVID world, would be helped by this machine.
Really, because obviously the cytokine storm is when your immune system literally attacks everything. It becomes hyperactive and then starts attacking all your vital organs, and eventually it will take you out unless you stop the immune system from doing that. But of course, if you stop the immune system from working, then you are now vulnerable to any kind of infection as well, as I understand it.
Exactly right.
Yeah. That's interesting. So this machine, how soon can it be out there? I mean, people will be hearing this thinking, gosh, I know somebody who's got liver cancer, liver failure. Where can I get on this machine, or where can they find out more?
So at this moment in time, it is not available for general use. We are still looking for funding in order to do the final clinical trial. So we think we need to do one more clinical trial to show as to the benefits that we have found with its use in our current trial translates into improvement in survival. So that is one study that we still need to do, and that's why we think we need 3 years to get it to patients in every NHS hospital so that these patients can access them.
So is there a trial that people who've been listening or watching this thinking, wow, because this could be somebody's last hope to do a trial. Is there somewhere they can get in touch if they can be part of this trial?
But at the moment, the trial is not running. We are still looking for funds in order to start that trial.
Right.
But we are hopeful that we should be able to start that within this year.
Well, how do you get the funds? If anyone's watching, listening, who can help fund you, because that's an incredible thing and it could save many, many lives. And the quicker you can get it out there and test it, the better, right?
Absolutely right. So UCL charities or role-free hospital charities or UCL charities will very happily receive any funds that anybody wants to donate towards bringing this trial forward.
Well, listen, Rajiv, it's been fantastic talking to you. Very inspirational. I'm so happy to hear that, and hopefully it will be something that will be rolled out very, very quickly. Rajiv Jalan, he's Professor of Hepatology at the University College London. Thank you so much. Right, well, it's now time for this week's Political Spotlight. Today, I'm joined by the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster. Now, Arlene had 2 stints as First Minister from 2016 to 2017 and then 2020 to 2021 with prominent former IRA leader Martin McGuinness serving as Deputy First Minister during her first term. Now, she was also the first woman to hold the position of Northern Ireland's First Minister. Prior to that, Arlene also served as Minister for Enterprise and Investment and also Minister for Finance and Personnel. So since her resignation as First Minister in 2021, Arlene has entered the House of Lords as a non-affiliated peer and become a presenter on GBNews. Now, pleased to say she's here in the studio, the fabulous Arlene Foster. Arlene, so nice to meet you.
Thank you, Nana. And what an amazing story, because, you know, when you have liver failure, normally the only way you deal with that is transplant.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could regenerate your liver again. I think that's just an amazing story.
Well, it's beautiful because you can regenerate the liver, but not in time, usually. So this is a way of sort of stalling the... It's fabulous. But it's so
anyway,
good.
back to me.
It's all about you, Arlene. It's all about Arlene. It's all about Arlene. But no, it's so good to talk to you because I remember I watched you on TV. I remember the days of Jerry Adams when he couldn't speak, you know, he didn't speak and there was the voiceover, which is all very silly, really, I thought. But, you know, I suppose the reasoning was there. But what brought you into politics to begin with?
Well, I suppose that's a very interesting question. I came from a background of my father was a police officer. He was attacked by the IRA. As a result of that, we had to move home. And I was always interested in politics and history. And I don't know whether that's because of what happened to my father or whether I would have been interested anyway. I tend to think I probably would have been. But I really got involved in politics when I went to university up in Belfast, Queen's University. Got involved in student politics and then got involved in mainstream politics after that. So it has always been about politics, about advocating for the United Kingdom and for parts of the UK staying together, and so it still remains today.
You must have been sort of young during the Troubles then in Northern Ireland.
Sure.
What was that like to live through? Because I watched it on the TV.
Yeah.
You'd hear about there'd be another bomb, or there was a bomb underneath a police car, or there was a bomb under this or something. And I remember being terrified of the whole prospect of the IRA, and they were the major terrorists. I mean, we hadn't heard of ISIS or anything. I mean, you know, the IRA almost feels slightly tame compared to people like ISIS.
Yeah.
But it really, what was it like during that time?
Well, I was born in 1970, so I was born just at the beginning, if you like, of the Troubles. And because I was the child of a police officer, violence did come to my door. And when I look back now, I had a very happy childhood, but it was an abnormal childhood, obviously, because you were living through violence, you were living through the news every evening that someone had been killed or there had been an attempted murder. So it was really an abnormal time. I'm very thankful that my children don't grow up with that sort of background to their youth and to growing up. And now when someone is attacked, it's a very big story because it doesn't happen very often. No. And that's good, and we want to eradicate it completely, of course.
You know, you were the first female minister in Ireland. What has that been like? Because obviously you share a similar... Nicola Sturgeon, have you met her?
Yeah.
What's she like? Is she all right? Go on, what's she like?
Well, the strange thing was when I was female First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon was in Scotland. Theresa May was here as Prime Minister. So there were quite a few females around at the time, actually. I mean, I hadn't realised, actually, how important it was for young women to look and see a woman in that position until I stepped down. And when I stepped down, I received numerous correspondence from young women saying, we were really glad to see a woman in that position. It has inspired us to get involved in whatever they were involved in. And that's really inspiring. It's really encouraging to me that younger women have looked on and said, well, thank you for doing that because now we're getting involved in politics or we're getting involved in public life. That's important.
What was it like doing that job?
It was tough. I loved being the leader of Northern Ireland. I loved being an advocate for Northern Ireland and telling the world what a wonderful place it was. But look, there were many, many challenges. And the system of government we have in Northern Ireland, where all of the parties are actually in the executive from the DUP to Sinn Féin, makes it very difficult to find common ground. And that's what you spend most of your time doing. You spend every day negotiating to try and find that common ground. So it can be exhausting, but it was something I felt very proud of doing, and I was honoured to do it as well. And it was fulfilling at times, but very, very challenging, Nana.
Because when Brexit happened, you would have been at the helm then, weren't you?
Yes.
And because I remember that everyone was saying the DUP have got us by the short and curlies, the DUP are in charge, because you had that little bit. What was it like then during the Brexit thing? And are you glad that Brexit has happened?
Well, I was in favour of Brexit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it hasn't developed in the fashion it has because of external events such as COVID. We haven't been able to take the opportunities as a country that we should have been taking. And I'm still hopeful that we can put our place in the world. And it's good to see us out there agreeing those trade deals. And we want to see more of that. But yes, so Brexit happened in 2016. Theresa May called a general election very suddenly, you will remember.
That was a disaster. She should never have done that.
At Easter time. And when she did that, she came back with not just enough people to form a majority, and therefore she came to us asking us to support her in a confidence and supply agreement. So that was a huge moment.
But didn't the DUP get a lot of money, though?
Well, we got money for Northern Ireland. Yeah. I mean, we didn't get it for ourselves. We got it for Northern Ireland. And actually, as a result of that, we have the best broadband infrastructure anywhere in the United Kingdom. And I'm very proud of that, because now people living in the most westerly part of the United Kingdom have the best broadband.
Well, that's something to be that's something to shout about. No, it is, isn't it?
Because it means so much to young people doing homework, to people who have to work from home, to people who have their own businesses. It's very important that we're connected. And if the union is to mean anything, it's about connecting the whole of the union, not just the towns and cities, but the rural areas as well.
But speaking of connecting the union, do you think that's likely Northern... it's the Republic of Ireland now. You can't say Southern Ireland anymore, is that right?
Yeah, well, they like to be called just Ireland,
just Ireland
not the Republic of Ireland, actually.
Is it likely that there'll be a unification now of Ireland? Do you think that the fact that the way the Brexit deal has occurred means... Why do you say no so...
No, I say no so quickly because the benefits of being in the United Kingdom are stark. And I think anyone who looks at culturally, politically, socially, economically, you're much better to be in the United Kingdom. And of course, it's something I believe in very strongly and something I will continue to advocate for, whether people are in Scotland, Wales, England, or in Northern Ireland.
And you're part of, so the House of Lords. Do you go there much? What's the deal with it? Are you an
So
actual
I'm non-affiliated, so I choose the things that I want to get involved in. And recently I've been taking part in the online safety bill about protecting our young people. I think that's really important. We live in a digital world, but our laws and our regulations are not up to speed with that digital world. And it will always be very difficult to be ahead of the game in terms of digital regulation. So I do take an interest in the House of Lords, and I must say, Nana, I'm really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, it's great. I'd love to be in the House of Lords at some point. What about...
I'll put in a word for you.
Thank you. Well, I think that's the way it works around there, isn't it? Now, let's come to modern-day politics then. We've got the COVID inquiry. In my mind, I'm thinking, I don't really want to go on about it. It's done. We're living in a world of hindsight. When you say, people saying, we knew within a very short space of time the virus wasn't that bad. I don't think we did. I didn't know. I mean, what's your view on this COVID inquiry? Is it necessary?
Well, I'm going to be at the COVID inquiry because, of course, I was First Minister at the time that the COVID regulations were taking place across the UK. So I'm actually going to the COVID inquiry in the near future. So I have to be careful and respect the inquiry. But I think it's right that people get answers. I think accountability is the right way forward. I think what frustrates people is the fact that it is going to take a long period of time. And the world does move on very quickly nowadays. I mean, we're sitting here, we're dealing with other things, and COVID seems a distant memory. But my goodness, Nana, it was a terrible time for this nation.
Yes,
it was a terrible time, taking away people's freedoms for the best of reasons at the time. But we need to go back and look at, could we have done things differently? What are the lessons we can learn from that? And what would happen if something like that was to come again?
We do this all the time, don't we? And then the phrase, lessons will be learned, and then we come back. It's like a cycle.
Yeah, it is a cycle.
It doesn't feel like we're going to learn anything. And even if we do, we probably won't take heed of it. But in half of me thinks, yes, it's relevant. Boris, with his phones, though, he's giving all the information. Do you think that he's doing that because, really, he's got nothing to lose, is he? I mean, they literally... now it's other politicians will be implicated in things. Do you think there's some...
Well, it's quite confusing, actually, at the moment about the whole WhatsApp scenario. People in the public can't really understand what's going on because Boris is saying, look, I will give all of my WhatsApp messages to Baroness Hallett. She can look at all of those and then decide what's relevant and what's not relevant. The Cabinet Office is saying, no, we're not going to do that because there's other reasons. I think it's very confusing for the public. They just want to get to the truth of what happened during that time, and I think that's what Baroness Hallett wants to do as well.
Yeah, well, it will be interesting to read all the messages. I can't wait just for the gossip, just for the gossip side of it, to be honest with you.
Not about the truth, the gossip, right?
Well, I want to know. I mean, I'd like to know what they were actually saying rather than what they were doing, you know, which is... But,
you know, there is a point to this, Nana, because people have to be able to speak freely to each other as well.
Yeah.
Without the risk of people saying that we're going to come in and look at this and we're going to interpret this in a particular way. I think ministers need to be able to converse with each other in an open and honest way as well. So there's two sides.
I agree with that as well, because who will be a politician if, you know, this is one of the reasons why people don't come forward for rape and things like that. Because the first thing they do is take your phone. If there's anything in there that could potentially
implicate you on something else.
I don't think it's a relevant thing. So, Arlene, listen, it's such a pleasure talking to you. What's next for you? Your GB News now. Have you got anything exciting coming up? We've got something happening in Ireland, haven't we? In July?
Yes, we've got the 12th of July demonstration. We have a 2.5-hour programme this year, so we're very excited about that. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to be coming from various places across Northern Ireland and Liverpool as well, because Liverpool has a parade on that day too.
Oh, I'd love to. I love Northern Ireland. I love Ireland. Ireland is a great place.
Yeah.
Well, Arlene, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Arlene has been my political spotlight. Arlene Foster, GB News presenter, and of course,
thank you.
Fantastic woman. Brilliant. Right, well, listen, we've had some emails in as well. We've been discussing all sorts of things during the show. Remember, keep them coming, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let's see, about regarding climate activism. Andy says, we keep hearing about the civil rights of protesters and strikers, but what about the civil rights of ordinary people trying to get about their daily lives? Enjoy a day out and enjoy a day out. Yes, so many messages coming. Keep them coming. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And .com, I've forgotten, we have changed. Stay tuned. I've got my monologue on Harry and Meghan on the way. Do not go anywhere. We are the People's Channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Now, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. There he is, yes, he is here. Dowler. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. I'm Bethany Elsie with your top stories from the GB newsroom at 4 p.m. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has offered his condolences to the families of those killed in India following a train crash where at least 288 people died and 850 were injured. The death toll makes it the country's deadliest rail incident in more than 2 decades. The army has been deployed to help evacuate the injured, with an extensive search and rescue operation ongoing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the site in Odisha state. The Epsom Jockey Club has praised the swift and decisive action of police after they detained 2 protesters at the Epsom Derby as they attempted to run onto the course. In total, 31 protesters have been arrested for attempting to disrupt the event, with 12 arrests made at the grounds. Animal Rising had threatened to cancel or severely delay the horse racing event, but it went ahead as planned. They've accused Surrey police of abusing their powers. Rail passengers are experiencing their 3rd day of major disruption this week as members of the ASLEF union go on strike. Workers across 15 train companies have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay and conditions. ASLEF, which represents 96% of train drivers, warn it's unlikely any services will be running. The disruption is affecting people attending the FA Cup final at Wembley and the Epsom Derby. Philip Schofield says he fears being spat on in the street after it was revealed he'd had an affair with a much younger colleague while presenting This Morning. In a new interview with The Sun, he admitted he's afraid to leave the house after resigning from ITV and being dropped by his talent agency. Schofield says he's getting by hour, with support from his daughters and friends. Diesel prices fell by a record of almost 12 pence last month, the biggest drop for over 2 decades. The RAC says the average price of diesel went from 158.9p to 147p in May. It's the 7th consecutive month in which UK pump prices have fallen, reducing the cost of filling up a typical family car by £6.50. Petrol prices also fell by 3 pence last month. Scotland's First Minister says there has never been a more important time for the country to become independent. Humza Yousaf claims Westminster is failing to support people in Scotland during the cost of living crisis. He says SNPs would build an economy that puts working families first. The First Minister is also accusing Labour of sitting on their hands while Tories undermine the Scottish government. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to launch its counter-offensive against Russia. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Zelensky said he believes Ukraine will succeed in recapturing Russian-occupied territory, but doesn't know how long it will take. Kyiv previously said it needed more Western armoured vehicles before the fight back could begin. Russia currently holds swathes of Ukrainian territory in the east, south and southeast. And a UK ticket holder won more than £110 million in last night's Euro Millions jackpot. The unnamed winner is now richer than footballer Harry Kane and actor Daniel Radcliffe, as well as singer Dua Lipa. That's according to Sunday Times Rich List. Players are urged to check if they could be the lucky winner. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. This could be my last Harry and Meghan monologue. It's bittersweet. I mean, the Duke and Duchess of Hazzard are apparently going to spare us. They said that they're going to be behind the camera from now on. No more podcasts, no more fly-on-the-wall mockumentaries, no more tell-all memoirs. Thank God. I'm relieved. It was sort of like waiting for an accident to happen because you knew it would, and then watching it in slow motion. No one wants to see it, but you just can't help but look. Although, to be honest, I don't believe them. Because even as they are saying this, Prince Harry is limbering up for a showdown on Tuesday, which he didn't need to go to, and will be one of the first times a member of the royal family has appeared in the dock, and he still has other court cases to get through, all initiated by him. Some would say unwisely, as they could end up costing him large chunks of his newly acquired fortune. And all might not be well in the Montecito mansion either. If reports are to be believed, Harry has a bolt hole in a swanky hotel close by. Apparently, they've had this for a while, but it seems a bit odd when you have a whole mansion and could easily escape the other by just going into one of the rooms. Maybe Meghan's got the ick after Harry spoke of his frostbitten manhood and all the details that he revealed in the book. I mean, I learnt that phrase off my teenage daughter. Then I experienced the ick for myself when my date wore three-quarter-length skinny-fit chinos. It was so bad, I remember saying, "What the hell have you got on?" Needless to say, we never saw each other again. After the revelations of the drug taking in Harry's book, he may end up back in the UK, cap in hand, if the Americans kick him out, which is, in my view, beginning to look more and more likely. Perhaps their new PR has pointed out their string of angered attempts to damage the royal family have only boomeranged back more vociferously and pretty much all ended in ridicule, with celebrities distancing themselves and people from all around the world laughing at them. The Americans have a field day with these two. Do you remember South Park? I took them about of them with the worldwide privacy tour. And the press there aren't regulated like the British press. Prince Harry has as much influence as you and I there. Welcome to my world, the world of normal people. I don't have a title. I can't get my own way. The car chase in New York was the last straw. The whole thing was hilarious when they tried to claw back any images that they were told too politely will go away. So, Harry and Meghan, I'll keep my promise if you keep yours. If you stay behind the cameras, I'll be super quiet. Right, so before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you hand in your phone for a public inquiry? Would you hand your own private phone? No, I don't think so. With the news that Boris Johnson's giving unredacted WhatsApp messages dating back to May 2021 directly to the COVID inquiry, bypassing the government, which has refused to hand them over. Is this just another Tory witch hunt? And would you be willing to do the same with your phone? And then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup. Grant Harrell will join me to give all the latest from behind the palace walls. Stay tuned for 5 o'clock this week's Difficult Conversation, where narcissistic abuse recovery coach Ronia Fraser will be joining me alongside Lucy Beresford. That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me @gbnews. So before we get started, let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Welcome back, Dowles.
Thank you.
That was about there's so much happening. You've missed all the Schofield stuff.
Do you know what? I did not miss it because I was actually staying with a friend of mine who works for the Men Online in LA, and obviously, and he has, he's got some Brit friends, and we just sat around like discussing it because obviously, I've heard these rumblings for a long time, and it's. I was slightly annoyed that it all blows up while I wasn't in the country, but it's, it was one of the media stories of our ages, and also it ties in with, obviously, with Meghan and Harry, because it's it's about somebody who was in the public eye who has courted the public eye and then doesn't like the focus that is, you know, when something goes wrong or something happens, that, you know, it's like a laser focus of everybody looking at them at the same time, everybody like going through, like anyone who came into this whole mess gets covered in mess, let's say, because it's a horrible, toxic story. And, you know, and I have friends that work on This Morning, and it's, you know, and it's been horrible for them, of course, because, you know, it's their job. But as I say, it's the same as with Meghan and Harry. They don't, you know, they've said so much stuff, and then now they think, oh no, and like oh no, what have we done? This is horrific. And like you said about the car chase, like, you know, bringing back memories of Princess Diana and stuff, and then having people like Whoopi Goldberg on The View saying, you know, you can't get up to those speeds in New York City. It's just, no, you can't, and it's embarrassing, and they've embarrassed themselves. And I think, you know, even Meghan and Harry have some sort of, you know, like gauge of when it's time to stop.
Yeah,
and I think that's now.
Well, it's losing them all popularity, credibility, and they're liars. I'm sorry, I don't quite believe that they're going to give up this. I mean, I know how much more can they talk about, though, because they really have gone to town on the royal family. But liars, pants on fire, they don't stop. And I think on Meghan, she saw that Spare really did affect her brand and affected her. And that's why she's distant. As you noted, she didn't come to the coronation. She's not coming to the court cases with Harry. Any other wife would be at the husband's side. Well, but not Meghan, because she thinks of herself. And Meghan knows her brand has really gone downhill. She is losing, you know, faith and credibility, not just here, but over the pond. And we all know she wants a political career. So for the moment, she's like, right, let's step back, because this isn't working.
Surely she had a hand in what was the content in Spare, and also, like, she, you know, obviously she's American, and they litigate left, right, and centre. She probably would have been like, oh, you should sue, you should do this, like, we're the victims.
Everyone else, like she blames her family, she blames Prince Charles, so he walked her down the aisle. She blames Kate for making her cry when it wasn't, you know, the real story. She will blame everyone else but herself.
Well, there's nothing left now for her apart from to make some Gwyneth Paltrow-style scented candles, I think.
You know where you can put those, darling.
She'll tell us exactly where to put them.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, so do you actually believe then, Sam, that they will actually stop this? Because, like you said, you pointed out with regard to Schofield and people who are in the public eye, so when you court the media on your own terms, that when the media comes back to you in its terms and you can't control it, then there's another...
But also, it's not just the media, it's, you know, we live in an age of social media, and like Philip Schofield said in his interview, it's... You know, it's people will go back into your social media posts and find things and do that, and, like, you know, they're like everybody's Miss Marple in the UK now, and they you know, and you only need to go on you know, comments in the last few years, anything to do with Phil Schofield or Meghan, like everybody knows stuff and they can write it on Twitter and say it on Twitter, where the media aren't allowed to print it or talk about it.
When you're in the public eye, you have to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, you have
sadly
to.
for Meghan, she will never take any criticism ever. And what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. Well, frankly, we're sick of it, and she knows it.
I just think that they will. I think that, I mean, obviously they've got this massive deal with Netflix, and I don't think it's been fulfilled yet. So I think that's why they're saying behind the camera, so they can do executive produce.
But they're not going to make that sort of money behind a camera, are they?
Yeah, but they've already got the money, Lizzie. So it's just they just need to fulfil what they've been paid for.
They might not be able to hold on to the money with all these court cases that may well not win.
Huge mansions and all their lifestyle, and they need protection.
And it's pricey.
He didn't win that one, did
he? When they say behind the camera, what I suspect is next is a movie about their lives.
Oh.
And Meghan said herself that she will help to pick the person who does her job, so who acts her.
I've already been asked to star in Meghan the movie.
I'll be the Wicked Witch of the East in it or something. Maybe they'll use one of my monologues.
I'm playing the ghosted friend.
So easy for you.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you've just joined us, welcome on board. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you hand over your mobile phone for a public inquiry? Just imagine if it were you. Send me your thoughts. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now asking you that question, whether you yourself would hand over your phone if a public inquiry required you to do so. Cast your vote now. Back in a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
If you just joined me, welcome on board. It's just coming up to 18 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app for free and check out all the programmes. I'm Nana Akua. Now, Surrey police have confirmed that they've arrested 31 protesters attempting to disrupt the Epsom Derby on Saturday. It's, of course, a big day for horse racing and a big day for football as well, including 12 in the ground. Let's cross over to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's there at Epsom now. Paul, so some arrests have been made. Has much happened in between the last time we spoke?
No, not really. Apart from that update from Surrey Police, as you say, Nana, 31 people arrested. Let's just take you through those figures. So 11 people arrested in the early hours of the morning in nearby Mitcham and Byfleet. A further 8 people arrested after their vehicle was stopped at around 10:20 this morning in the local area. 12 people arrested. Sorry, 12 people arrested within the racecourse since the event began this morning, also in connection with planned criminal activity. And of course, we know that one of those tried to enter the track. In fact, he did enter the track about 30 seconds to a minute after the beginning of the race. He was taken down by sort of 2 or 3 stewards and marshals and taken away. So in that sense, we know that Animal Rising did manage to invade the track, but they didn't manage to either cancel or delay the start of the derby. Here's what Louisa Hillwood had to say. She's from Animal Rising when we spoke to her just at the official protest at the front of the racecourse earlier.
We actually approached the Jockey Club to start dialogue about what we wanted here today, because we want to protect the animals. We believe that the Jockey Club should be stepping in and making sure that happens. I mean, the Jockey Club, they actually own the Grand National race, where we saw 3 horses die this year. They also own and run Epsom Racecourse. They need to do better.
Yeah, so they say they're not disappointed. It's just part of amplifying the bigger conversation around animal welfare. And of course, their end goal is a complete stop, a complete halt to all horse racing. Eyes will turn next to Ascot. That's the next big meeting in a couple of weeks' time. I did ask Louisa Hillwood, will you be trying to interrupt the racing at Ascot? And she wouldn't be drawn on that. But one would have thought, since they targeted the National and they've targeted the Derby with very limited success, they will try to cause some sort of disruption at Ascot as well. But they're going to continue the conversation with the Jockey Club. They're the people that own Epsom and own Aintree in terms of animal welfare, and the conversation continues, as does the racing here at Epsom today. Just a few races left today on what has been a glorious sunny day for horse racing.
All right, Paul, well, thank you very much. Keep us updated. That's Paul Hawkins, international reporter. He's there in Epsom. Right now, though, it's time for the Great British Debate This Hour. And I'm asking, would you hand over your mobile phone or your phone for a public inquiry? Well, with the news that Boris Johnson is giving unredacted WhatsApp messages dating back to May 2021 directly to the COVID inquiry, bypassing the government, which has refused to hand them over. Is this just yet another one of these sort of hunts on Boris? But actually, he's offered to hand the phone in, so I don't really think that stands. Do you think that there's some other reason the Cabinet Office have launched a legal challenge to the inquiry to demand for texts from the former Prime Minister and officials, but with endless inquiries and requests for private messages? Is this another attempt at unelected bureaucrats pursuing some sort of vengeful campaign against our Prime Minister, although he has, as I said, handed over the messages? Are they worried? What are they worried about? Would you be comfortable handing over your messages scrutinising you? Would you be happy with that? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking that very question. Would you hand over your own phone for a public inquiry? With me now is Dennis McShane. He's a former Minister of State for Europe and Labour MP for Rotherham. Suzanne Evans, political commentator Anne Widdecombe, and former Conservative Minister. Sorry, it's all higgledy-piggledy. I'm going to start with you, Dennis McShane. I'm going to risk it, although he talks a lot. Dennis, never get a word in edgeways. Dennis, start me off. What do you think? If you had to hand in your phone for a public inquiry, would you do it?
Nana, I'd have my phone over to you. I mean, I have no problems at all. The idea that there's a full inquiry into something that wrong happened and anybody would object to that is quite astonishing. I mean, hats off to Boris Johnson for handing it in, but only halfway through the COVID epidemic, March or May 2021. What about 2020, early 2021? The big question, of course, is, are they protecting Rishi Sunak? As Chancellor, he signed off on some very dodgy COVID deals with Tory donors. That's what the inquiry will have to look at amongst the medical questions that they'll have to discuss.
Well, let's get to Suzanne Evans. What do you think? I mean, Boris has quite willingly handed over his phones. I don't think he's got anything left to lose, really. If it were you, Suzanne, do you think it's right that he should be handing his phones over in that way?
You know, we have laws in this country and public servants have to hold themselves to the highest standards in public office. And we had a situation with COVID where terrible policy decisions were made. This inquiry is going to look at all kinds of aspects of that particular time. And as a public servant, you have a duty to hand over any information that's going to help that inquiry. And I find it quite astonishing, actually, that the government's been dragging its heels on this, not least as we increasingly have government overreach into our own private lives. We're constantly under surveillance. We're constantly being told, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. And yet here we are having a government that actually seems to think it's above the law and is trying to use legal action to evade what I would say is its duty as a public servant to give every evidence it can to this inquiry to make sure that the hideous mistakes that were made throughout COVID times are never repeated again.
Suzanne, but don't you think that people might look at that and go, well, you know, because some of the things that you see in the phone now, we have the benefit of knowledge. We know now what we didn't know then. So some of the messages you could interpret slightly differently, and you would, like, I've heard people saying, oh, yeah, but we knew within a few 12 weeks that COVID wasn't as bad as it was going to be. Well, I was there. I didn't know in 12 weeks. I don't believe that. Do you not think that there's an element of sort of hindsight, people now with knowledge looking on and saying, well, why did you say that then?
Well, of course, hindsight's always a beautiful thing, isn't it? But that doesn't alter the fact that decisions were made, and actually this inquiry and the public, I think, deserve to know how those decisions were made. We already know from Matt Hancock's leaked WhatsApps, and thank goodness we saw those, because what was going on behind the scenes was despicable. We knew, for instance, that they were constantly telling us up front, it's about the science. The reality was it wasn't about the science, it was about politics. It was about what Nicola Sturgeon was doing in Scotland. It was about what the public wanted. You know, that's not how good policy is made. I've been involved in making policy. That is the worst way to make policy. And as I say, we need to get to the bottom of this to make sure that those mistakes never happen again.
Anne Widdecombe.
I'm not at all sure that I would be happy handing over a phone. I mean, it would depend on several things. The first is, how restricted was the use of the phone? Was it solely for government business, or was it also used for personal business? And I would be less concerned about revealing anything about myself than I would about other people who had revealed stuff on the phone. I mean, all the time I get on my website, on my phone, on my emails from people who are contacting me, rehearsing their personal circumstances. Well, I wouldn't want to be handing that over. And you may say, oh, well, trust to the honour of the inquiry, that they wouldn't actually use anything that was irrelevant. But remember what the police did to Damien Green. You know, they went and examined his computer for one purpose, and then later on, much, much later on, revealed something completely irrelevant. Now, you know, there was a time when there was honour in public life. I'm not so certain that I think there is so much honour in public life at the moment that I would just want to trust it.
And also, I mean, listen, if I come back to you, Dennis, like you said, you'd hand over your phone and all this, but she can't, Baroness Hallett cannot really seriously go through all of the messages. So she's going to maybe give somebody else part of that job as well. And now you've got to rely on those people not to leak information. And what, even she may not take certain parts of information, but as Anne's pointed out, there might be other things that are totally unrelated, but could be in some way damaging to that individual that could get out there, Dennis. Do you not think that that is a worry?
This is the biggest public inquiry since that into the Iraq war. It's not Lady Hallett herself who's going to sit there 1824 scrolling through Boris Johnson's WhatsApps. There'll be staff, they'll then be printed out, and the members of the committee will have a good look at it. I mean, we've got much more sensitive about it. I remember coming in from the airport with Tony Blair once, and he said, Dennis, you got your mobile on you? I said, well, yes. Prime Minister, he said, well, can you get number 10 Downing Street for me? And I thought, my God, this incredibly important conversation will be recorded forever on my mobile. I mean, it's just Tony never carried a mobile, and actually it's not a bad idea for Prime Ministers not to carry mobiles. But in general, every bit of information now has to be made available to that inquiry. For all the points Suzanne made on the choice of what decisions were taken, my points about the deep, deep corruption with so much money going to Tory-linked donors, Anne's point. But in the end, I mean, frankly, everybody knows, private firms know everything on my iPhone and yours, and we don't worry about that. So the idea that the public people, public committee, a judge and all the rest of it shouldn't have it, I think is just daft.
Yeah, but you've seen how all these leaks suddenly appear and somebody said this or somebody did that and suddenly it's everywhere, it's in the press, they're briefing members of the press and it's come from a civil servant or somebody somewhere who remains nameless and faceless. This would be a worry for people even getting into politics, Suzanne. Like, you didn't seem to see it's a problem, but would you hand over your own phone if you were involved in You would?
Well,
and what if they
yes,
found something else?
Obviously, you know, I have been a politician. I was a local councillor. You know that when you send an email, everything is subject to an FOI inquiry. And that actually makes you think about what you're going to say and what you're going to do and how you have to respond. And I don't think that's any bad thing. And I wonder if perhaps we've got this situation now. WhatsApp is so easy. We know it's secure. Perhaps we're a little bit too trigger happy with it. And if the other issue, of course, is that if politicians are trying to use WhatsApp as a way to sidestep potentially being captured by a Freedom of Information Act, then again, that's something that needs to be looked at. And I appreciate what Anne's point is. There are always people who are going to leak things. But at the end of the day, it was the government that set up this COVID inquiry. And now the government is basically saying we're not going to cooperate with it. I find that really difficult.
Anne?
Yes, I mean, the idea that, you know, people think about FOI before they have a personal chat to a friend is very, very unlikely. What we're now doing, of course, is censoring the record. I mean, politicians do not now put things down on the record. Civil servants don't, that they would once have done. They deal with this orally in the margins of meetings because they're afraid of FOI. So, I mean, the idea that, you know, we all somehow worry about FOI off the record is simply not valid. I mean, you know, we do trust private conversations to stay that way. And if we didn't, life would become completely impossible. If you couldn't advance an idea or even explore an idea because you were afraid that at some future stage it was going to come back to bite you, that even such a thought had entered your head, however briefly. And future historians are going to already find the records a desert of real information. And I don't particularly want to add to that by saying, well, now, you know, even with our WhatsApps, we've got to be so careful. We should be able to be free to talk. We always were.
Well, I mean, my thoughts are it seems almost unworkable. No one will want to go into politics, but I take all your points. It's good to talk to you all. Thank you very much. Dennis McShane, former Minister for Europe, Labour MP for Rotherham, Suzanne Evans, political commentator, and Anne Widdecombe, former Conservative Minister. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you all. So what do you think then? What are your thoughts? Would you hand over your phone? Let's see what you've been saying. Simon says, I have nothing to hide, though. Yeah, but you might have said something to someone and then somebody interprets it differently. Steve says, if I was paid as a public servant and what was on my phone was relevant to the public inquiry, then yes. Anthea says, as my own personal phone is purchased by me for my own personal use, handing it over will be subject to my views on whether I agree to it being necessary. If said phone was provided for work purposes, this would be a different scenario as it removes the personal element. So you would hand that over. You never know, though. You might have said something and somebody reinterprets it differently and you may have got them confused, the two phones you did. Well, anyway, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up is the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, would you hand over your phone for a public inquiry? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Nana, thank you. Here's your latest from the GB newsroom at 4:30. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has offered his condolences to the families of those killed in a train crash in India. At least 288 people have died and around 850 injured, making it the country's deadliest rail incident in more than 2 decades. The army has been deployed to help with the search and rescue operation. The Epsom Jockey Club has praised the swift and decisive action of police after they detained 2 protesters at the Derby as they tried to run onto the course. In total, 31 protesters have been arrested for attempting to disrupt the event, with 12 arrests made at the grounds. Animal Rising had threatened to cancel or severely delay the horse racing event, but it went ahead as planned. The group has accused Surrey Police of abusing their powers. Thousands of people attending sports and music events have faced major disruption on the rail network today as members of the ASLEF union go on strike. It's the 3rd day of industrial action this week, affecting those travelling to the Epsom Derby and the FA Cup final at Wembley. Staff at 15 train operating companies have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay and conditions. And President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to launch its counter-offensive against Russia. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Zelensky said he believes Ukraine will succeed in recapturing Russian-occupied territory, but doesn't know how long it will take. Kyiv previously said it needed more Western armoured vehicles before the fight-back could begin. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com. Now it's back to Nana.
Well, still to come. Thank you very much, Bethany. At 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Narcissistic abuse recovery coach Rona Fraser and broadcaster psychotherapist Lucy Beresford will join me to discuss narcissism. And how about it? I mean, do you know what it is? And it's frighteningly common, but what can be done to combat it? And then on the way next, though, it's the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you hand over your own phone for a public inquiry?
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just joined us, where have you been? Oh, that's fine, it's fine, it's fine. You're allowed to get to the loo. 38 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's now time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you hand over your phone for a public inquiry? With the news that Boris Johnson is giving unredacted WhatsApp messages dating back to May 2021 directly to the COVID inquiry, bypassing the government, which actually refused to hand over the phone. What do you think? Would you be as willing to do that? Boris has been very willing. He's doing it because perhaps he's got really nothing to hide. Everything's there. But the others, well, the Cabinet Office have launched a legal challenge to the inquiry's demand for texts for the former Prime Minister and officials. But how many of us would actually be comfortable handing over all our private messages to a scrutinising group of officials? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I thought I'd turn it over on you and ask you whether you yourself would hand over your phone for a public inquiry. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, Lizzie, I'm going to start with you, Lizzie. Somebody says to you, hand over your phone.
You're giving me anxiety even thinking
The
about it.
thought of it. I mean,
no way, not on your Nelly.
What even if you had like a public job and you put the stuff on your phone and they would want to see them?
Well, look, even when I went to Strictly and they said you've got to give your phone up, I actually put it in my bra and then stupidly I hadn't turned it off. It started lighting and they came and frog marched me out.
Did they?
They did. Oh, that was
You and your bright boobs again.
Did they let you back in though after?
I just went to the bar. It's far more fun, actually. Anyway, but look, there is this inquiry, and Boris has to give up his phone. I can't wait to see what's on Boris's WhatsApp messages. To be honest, it's going to be more raunchy than Sam's. But all MPs have to do this if there's an investigation, whatever. But what needs reforming and doing correctly is this inquiry, which I'm sorry is run by Muppets, if you don't mind me saying, and it's taking forever. How come in all different countries like Sweden, they've wrapped this up within 2 years? This is going to go on and on and on. And by the end of it, frankly, we're going to go, oh, do we really care anymore? Yes, people want answers. Yes, people want to know what really went on. But, you know, by the time they finish this, we're just going to give up the will to care anymore.
Well, 2028 is when they said it would be finished. That is, what, like 4 or 5 years, really? Realistically, usually then they come out with lessons will be learned. And then nothing is that old one repeated again. Sam, what do you think? If somebody said to you, look, hand over your phone for an inquiry, what would you say?
Well, once upon a time, I wrote a book called The Insider by Sam Dowler. You can get it on for a bargain price.
What, 99p?
Lizzie came to my book launch, actually. But in it, it was 5 years ago.
How many did it sell?
5.
I don't know. They didn't tell me, actually.
Oh.
Did you get any money? You obviously didn't.
I did get money, yes. But basically, in it, I have a chapter on it's a gay guy's guide for straight men on how to treat women, and in it I talk about relationships and and the phones in relationships, and it's saying how you never look through a partner's phone because you're never going to find them saying, oh my God, my partner's so beautiful and wonderful. It'll be different things that you can read into anything. So like if you take anything out of context, then it could look awful. I mean, like this is what we say about our phones. Like, I mean, I'm sure I've had a lot of off-colour conversations with people because, I have a dark sense of humour, etc. And therefore, if you give your phone over, they could be like, oh, what is this? Do you know what I mean? So I don't think it is. I think it is your personal information. But however, if you are a Prime Minister or a person in the public eye, for example, with Phil Schofield, at what point did he think, I should just not do this? Like, you shouldn't do, or like we've said about, Rishi Sunak and the seatbelt. You had to be squeaky clean if you are in a position like that. And if you don't, and if you go against the rules, like Boris has done, then you kind of have to do it.
Well, as Donald Trump said, never put anything in writing. And the thing is, when you are a politician, you have to be extra careful. And the thing is with WhatsApps, you write much more freely than you do on an email. That's the trouble. And MPs need to be far more careful.
And it's encrypted either end as well on WhatsApp. So you even if there's a police investigation, they have to ask Meta to even break into the messages.
But what about the notion that if you know that everything's going to be like that, you're not going to put anything down in writing? See, so where you think, oh, well, because you're doing that, I think it's going to be counterproductive in that politicians will do things more underhandedly. There'll be more talking rather than any writing, which, if I'm going to say, if I've got something to say about someone or something and I would actually call that person and have a word with them and say it. I won't put things down. I do that myself. I self-edit, I self-censor. all the time when it comes to written things, because I know if I write something, somebody could then say, oh, she said this, and take it out of context. A little while ago, like years ago, I said about COVID.
What are you going to say about Lizzie Cundy?
Oh, God.
Now, listen, it was about the thing where I think it was the government that said that they put you in prison for 10 years if you broke the rules and whatever. And at the time, I think I was working for the BBC and things, you can't say that you're going to break the law. So I said, yeah, I would agree with that. I said, that's fine, you know, because those were the rules at the time. I went along with it. The amount of times that comes back on Twitter and people actually adding bits in, taking bits from this show and distorting it and making it. So my thing is that once something's taken out of context, like that was then. I mean, this is now. If you said that to me now, I'd say, well, we now know that COVID isn't this. So I would say something different. But that's my problem with these things, that they were taken totally out of context, out of time, and then with hindsight. So we now have the knowledge.
Of course.
Like, no one knew at the beginning what COVID was going to be like. At the beginning, I was in Milan when it broke out. I didn't think I was going to get back home. No, I'm not showing off, but it was in part of Italy.
I wrote something...
And people were sadly dying, and the hospitals were getting piled up. We didn't know it was going to particularly affect the elderly, the vulnerable, all what we learned. But I have to say, what worries me about this is going to put people off wanting to be in politics because everything
I wouldn't be surprised.
Scrutinised.
Everything
why
is
scrutinised. And why would you want to be a politician? Boris doesn't care. He's making a load of money, doing his speeches and probably a movie.
That would be the least worries about getting into politics these days.
And it's a poison chalice. Look at how Liz Truss fought to be Prime Minister over and over. And she was like, even watching the hustings now, you just think, oh, bless her, because she's like giving it her best, and then she got it, like took a sip of that poison chalice and exploded.
And now it's known as the lettuce.
Yeah, exactly.
But who will get into politics?
Let's not be horrible.
Let us alone.
But let's leave Liz alone, because the point is she had the right vision. Like the things that she was saying are the things that I would have supported. Like, for example, she wanted women to be supported in childcare. I 100%.
Yeah, of course.
She's right. She was talking about cutting taxes. 100% right.
She just did it all the way.
But with politics, no matter if you are Prime Minister and you're a Conservative Prime Minister, or if you're a Labour Prime Minister, at least 50% of the country are going to hate you immediately. So it's, as I said, it's a poison chalice. It's nobody wants to be. You're never going to be loved by everybody. So don't get into politics unless you've got a really thick skin. I would say.
My local MP came to the fete and then getting thrown tomatoes at him. Who would want this?
Were they in the stocks?
Who would want this?
Did you have your rotten veg with you?
I did, actually. I'm not happy with him. Not happy with him at all. Yes.
Don't call it that.
No, but it needs... this inquiry needs reforming. And people are just going to say, oh, I don't care anymore. But it's taking way too long.
Go on, Sam.
But then you've got like all those Matt Hancock WhatsApps as well. So I mean, that shone a light for loads of us on what it was and what they were thinking and what and how they wanted to proceed. So therefore, I mean, of course, it would be super interesting to read through Boris's WhatsApps. But if he's handing it over, I'm hoping that it won't be too crazy.
He's got so many children. I think there's going to be
that he knows of.
There might be some more that he might actually know which ones they are. But actually, and as we speak of that, actually, the way people are sort of hounding him, he's just become a father as well. People forget that man has very thick skin in how he's putting up with all this. Because I'll tell you what, if they should have been on the other foot and it'd been, say, I think maybe the Labour Party in this position, I don't think the media would have been that interested.
No, exactly.
So
I totally agree.
But let's see what you think, because the show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices. This is their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's head over to Bristol. Let's get some sense from one of the animals in the zoo. It's Lee Harris. I'm joking, Lee. You know that. I just haven't used that gag for a while. Lee, what do you think then? Boris, he's handing over that phone literally with glee.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to ask me personally, like as a regular member of the public, to hand over my mobile phone, I would see that as an invasion of privacy. But in this situation, I probably would, and I understand why Boris has handed over his WhatsApp messages. He was the PM, and the COVID inquiry is a matter of national importance, and the public has a right to an open and fair process that has access to as much information as possible. But in my humble opinion, Boris is playing this quite well so far. He's stepping up, taking back control of the narrative, and his actions clearly demonstrate that he's embracing accountability and transparency. He took a bold step by handing over these messages directly to the COVID inquiry and bypassing the government. wonderfully so, I might add. But this shows, a willingness for him to open himself up to scrutiny, which no one can disagree is a cornerstone of a healthy democracy. Fair play to him. I think Rishi Sunak should do the same.
I don't think it's probably that. I suspect that it's got something to do with the fact that he knows that his career right now politically is on the ropes. He also knows that the inquiry will take some 3, 4, 5 years, earliest to 2028, so everyone will have forgotten by then. And he also knows that the others have way more to lose than him because, if it transpires that he was the one that was trying to say that we should get out of lockdown and Rishi Sunak was forcing it on us or whatever, then Boris will be just sitting back and letting all the... I was about to say, I'm not going to use it, but you know what? You heard it. I didn't say it out loud.
Well done.
I think that's more like it, Lee, don't you? Thank you so much, Lee Harris. Brilliant to talk to you. That's Lee Harris. He's our great British voice. He's there in Bristol. Well, today I've been asking, would you hand your own personal mobile phone to the COVID inquiry, to the public inquiry? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Sarah says, no way, I've got nothing to hide, but what's on my phone is my business. It's for me and no one else. I'm with you. Steve says, if I was paid as a public servant and what was on it was relevant to the public inquiry, then yes, I think I've read that before. Annie says, as my own personal phone is purchased by me, I've read that one as well, she said it's subject to me and my views, I will decide whether it's necessary. If the phone was used, provided for work purposes, this would be a different scenario as it removes the personal element. Tim says, if I was running the country, yes, and so should Boris. Would you know what? Boris has done that, and I think the others have more to worry about than him. I've got a poll up right now on Twitter as well throughout the show asking, would you hand your own personal phone, your phone, for a public inquiry? Currently, 30% of you say yes, 70% of you say no. I'm with the 70% right now. Absolutely, but you're with me. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio on the way. We'll be getting our royal roundup after the King's private visit to Romania this week. That's on the way. We're discussing all things royal with Grant Howard.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. It's just coming up to 54 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Right now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. On the menu, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are reportedly going to take a step back from the public eye and stop writing books, making mockumentaries and having interviews. I don't believe them. And King Charles has taken a trip to his holiday home in Romania. So every Saturday, I'd love to give you a rundown. Who better to do so today? It's Grant Harold, ex-royal butler. Hello, Grant. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, Nana. How
Are you on? I'm good, thank you. Are you on some cruise ship somewhere? You're somewhere nice.
No, I'm back home. I've been 5 weeks on cruise ships. I've now got some time at home, so I'm enjoying some peace and quiet.
Right, so speaking of peace and quiet, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, they say they're going to be very quiet. Although, let's not forget, Harry's got some sort of court case going on Tuesday. That's quite loud. But what do you think? Do you believe them?
Do you know, I read that there's been comments made that a lot of people are getting nervous being around them because there is this thing, and I said this even during the coronation, that whenever you speak to them, anyone speaking to them, they're going to be worried that they're going to be part of a future documentary or a future article or news story. And I'm sure the King is probably over the moon with this news, if hopefully it is true, that they are going to stop what they're doing and become private. I use that. I hope that's what they mean by this, that they're going to become private and that they're going to stop, all these... But who knows? It's difficult to say. They're saying that now, but it could all change again within another month or two. So I think there's always going to be... People are always going to sit on the outside of caution with the two of them, but... Who knows? Maybe for some reason they've decided it's time to stop and start trying to support the royal family.
I don't think they understand the word of privacy. Perhaps that's what the problem is. They don't get it. They don't understand what that means. So that's why they're struggling with it. What about King Charles? He's visiting Romania. Has he got a home in Romania? Is that correct, or was that my understanding?
Well, do you know the thing about the King and his house in Romania? Not many people know he's got a home in Romania. He's had it, I want to say, since about 2016. But even when I was there, he used to have visits to Romania, and he's got friends out there. It's not too far from Serbia, which again is where his late father's mother was. Obviously, grandparents were from Serbia. There's a lot of historical connections with that part of the world. So it doesn't surprise me that the King actually has got a home there. And Nana, as I'm sure that many of the listening viewers are aware, he's somebody that enjoys privacy, time out. He loves the countryside. Romania is somewhere he enjoys being. And I should also mention that Highgrove, they actually got seeds. There's a wildflower meadow, and some of the seeds came from Romania as well. So there's been this long relationship with Romania, and it doesn't surprise when he goes there to maybe escape from everything for a little bit.
Don't blame him. I'd love to escape to a home in Romania. I can't afford it, though. And what about Will and Kate? They went to the wedding in Jordan, didn't they? Which I thought was really quite nice.
It was nice. Apparently, it was also a bit of a surprise. I understand that Princess Beatrice and her husband was also there, part of the 140 guests. But I thought it was quite nice. And they've got a close relationship with the Jordanian royal family. So again, I wasn't surprised at this. I noticed there was other members of different royal families there as well. And again, it shows, it's quite nice to see the Prince and Princess of Wales carrying out these official engagements now, kind of going forward. And some people might think, well, why was it not the King and Queen that went? But as some of us will remember, again, from the late Queen, this is the part of the royal family. They get other members of the royal family to carry out official duties, especially when they're friends, and they are friends of that royal couple.
Harry and Meghan must be looking at this thinking, do you think that Harry is regretting this sort of the overall thing, especially Spare? Because you've met him, you know him. Do you think he would be regretting writing that book?
I think he is, Nana. I mean, I was quoted last week in saying that I've kind of mentioned, or I've said that, you know, would Harry come back to the UK? And I've said never say never. And the reason I say that is I know how close Harry was to his family. I know how much his family meant to him. I don't really understand, as we've had this discussion many times, Nana, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand the end game. But part of me thinks that maybe he is thinking, I'm missing out on that. I could be doing that, because he did enjoy his royal duties. He enjoyed his association with the royal family, with his military, you know, with the connections, the military's background. He loved all of this. So I find it really difficult to believe that he's forever given that up. So I think he's back over in the States watching, probably thinking, why am I not still there, not still actively a senior member of the royal family?
Well, the decision might be taken out of his hands, of course, because in the book he revealed that he's been taking certain drugs before he got to America, and they don't like that much at all.
Yes.
So do you think that he might actually end up... Because especially after that fantasy car ride that they had, the Dukes of Hazzard, which is what I've started to call them now, do you think that after that, because it really was ridiculous what they were saying, the whole, you know, even the mayor of New York was laughing, and they were all laughing at it, even the taxi driver who picked them up was having a laugh. And, you know, do you think that now the mood has definitely shifted?
I love that Dukes of Hazzard. That's brilliant, Nana. Do you know, I think the problem they've got is the things that they're saying, as we've said before, a lot of it's not adding up. Some of it they've said over the years, some of it I believe, other bits I don't, and a lot of it's not adding up. And like many of us, we're all kind of getting a bit fed up with it. And I think it must become embarrassing for them, because even though they're saying it, and then you've got, if you mentioned the taxi driver saying that's not what happened, well, it's embarrassing. And I'm sure maybe I don't know why, I don't know, you know, whether somebody's there giving them advice, whether it's their advice, don't know where all this is coming from, and it just doesn't make sense. And which is why I'm glad, going back to what we said earlier on, that if they are going to stop all these kind of documentaries and kind of stories and things, if they are going to stop, I think it's the wisest thing they've done since the day they got married. I think it's the best thing they're going to do, is to stop all of this and just focus on their family and what they want to do. And if they want to continue being part of the royal family, then that's a discussion to be had with the king at a later date. But at the moment,
well,
I think they've just got to focus on their private lives.
If he'll have them back, Grant, but I doubt it. Listen, well, he's a nice man, he will actually. Listen, Grant, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. This is GBNews. That is Grant Harold. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. More to come in the next hour. It is 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. On the way, I'll be joined by a narcissistic abuse recovery coach to find out how to spot a narcissistic abusive relationship. Maybe you're in one. Stay listening. It's fascinating, all of that stuff. Then, on the way, the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Nana, thank you. Hello there, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom at 5:01. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has offered his condolences to the families of those killed in a train crash in India. At least 288 people have died and around 850 injured, making it the country's deadliest rail incident in more than 2 decades. The army has been deployed to help with the search and rescue operations. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the site in Odisha state.
I am deeply pained. Many passengers from different states have lost something during this journey. The people who have lost their lives. It's beyond sad and very disturbing. The government will leave no stone unturned and will provide the best treatment to the people who've been injured. The relatives who we've lost can't come back, but the government is with their families in this hour of grief.
The Epsom Jockey Club has praised the swift and decisive action of police after they detained 2 protesters at the Epsom Derby as they tried to run onto the course. In total, 31 protesters have been arrested for attempting to disrupt the event, with 12 arrests made at the grounds. Animal Rising has threatened to cancel or severely delay the horse racing event, but it did go ahead as planned. The group has accused Surrey Police of abusing their powers, and Louise Hillwood from Animal Rising says they're happy with today's outcome.
that was one of our goals, but the second goal, and probably an extremely important one, is that we wanted to start a national conversation. We wanted people to be talking about what happened today, what happens to the horses in horse racing, but also to animals in other industries, in sport, entertainment, and in our food system.
Thousands of people attending sports and music events have faced major disruption on the rail network today as members of the ASLEF union go on strike. It's the third day of industrial action this week, affecting those travelling to the Epsom Derby and the FA Cup final at Wembley. Staff at 15 train operating companies have walked out in an ongoing dispute over pay and conditions. Philip Schofield says he's afraid to leave his home after admitting to an affair with a much younger male colleague at This Morning. The 61-year-old resigned from ITV and was dropped by his talent agency over the scandal. In a new interview with The Sun, Schofield said he fears being spat on in the street and that he's getting by hour with support from his daughters and friends. Diesel prices fell by a record of almost 12 pence last month, the biggest drop for over 2 decades. The RAC says the average price of diesel went from 158.9 pence to 147p in May. It's the 7th consecutive month in which UK pump prices have fallen, reducing the cost of filling up a typical family car by £6.50. Petrol prices also fell by 3 pence last month. Scotland's First Minister says there's never been a more important time for the country to become independent. Humza Yousaf claims Westminster is failing to support people in Scotland during the cost of living crisis. He's also accused Labour of sitting on their hands while the Tories undermine the Scottish government. The First Minister has promised the SNP will build an economy that works for working families. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to launch its counter-offensive against Russia. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Zelensky said he believes Ukraine will succeed in recapturing Russian-occupied territory, but doesn't know how long it will take. Kyiv previously said it needed more Western armoured vehicles before the fight-back could begin. Russia currently holds swathes of Ukrainian territory in the east, south and southeast. And a UK ticket holder won more than £110 million in last night's Euro Millions jackpot. The unnamed winner is now richer than footballer Harry Kane, actor Daniel Radcliffe and singer Dua Lipa. That's according to the Sunday Times Rich List. Players are being urged to check if they could be the lucky winner. I only wish it was me. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
God, if only it was me. God, if only it was me. I'd come to work in a dress made out of money. This is GB News. Welcome aboard. I'm Nana Akua. Thank you for that, Bethany. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Now, still to come, Britain's tax system is raking in more than ever before from inheritance tax, and the government collected a record £7.1 billion last year, but the levy has been abandoned by much of the Western world. So today I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? And my difficult conversation for today is a survivor of narcissistic abuse, turning her harrowing experience into becoming the UK's leading specialist for narcissist abuse recovery. And also joining me will be a psychotherapist and also ex-ITV's agony aunt, Lucy Beresford. Email me as ever, gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. So it's time now for difficult conversations, despite being little known and often misunderstood. Narcissistic abuse is frighteningly common and can occur in any type of relationship, a romantic one, a familial one, in friends and in the workplace. And Ronia Fraser is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Now, she turned her harrowing experience into becoming the UK's leading specialist for narcissistic abuse recovery. Would you know if you were in a narcissistic abusive relationship? What would be the signs? So to discuss this, I'm joined by narcissistic abuse recovery coach Ronia Fraser and also broadcaster and ex-ITV This Morning's agony aunt Lucy Beresford. She's a psychotherapist as well. Well, listen, I'm going to start with your story first, Rania. Talk to me. This is because I think I once went out with somebody who was slightly narcissistic, if I dare say. I learned lessons there that I haven't. Talk to me about your story, Rania. What was your story within it?
Well, in a nutshell, I was at a point in my life where I thought I was living my best life, and then I got involved with the wrong person, and literally overnight my whole life came crashing down. And I was living in LA at the time, and I had a really successful career, finance career in the music industry. I had a house in Hollywood Hills, so I was living my California dream. And next thing I knew, I went from this highly functioning woman that I've always been to not being functioning at all. And at that point, I, of course, didn't know what had happened to me at all. I didn't have the words. I didn't have the understanding. I just knew that something was terribly wrong. And I basically had to drop everything I had built for myself in the US and came back to the UK because I literally had to run for my life. And as a consequence of that, I was really struggling with my mental health in the aftermath of the abuse. And I just thought there had to be something that could reverse the damage as effectively as it was caused, because I knew I hadn't always been like that. But all of a sudden, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And my life at that point wasn't worth living. So I kind of went on this mission to find something that could reverse the damage, and which is what brings me to what I do today.
So Rania, just with the abuse that you suffered, so this was with a partner, right? How did it manifest itself then? Because you talk about it and you sort of miss the bit that people really want to understand what exactly, how it transpired in your life.
Well, it creeped in really slowly, and I didn't recognize it at all because I thought I had met my soulmate, because obviously that's the illusion that a narcissist creates. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt understood, and somebody just loving me just the way I was. And then very gradually what happened was that all of a sudden everything he used to love about me, he all of a sudden despised. And the whole love bombing that he did to draw me in turned really into really intense devaluation. The gaslighting came in. I mean, it's become a common term at this stage, where he would start distorting the reality to such an extent that I literally thought I was losing my mind and I was going crazy. Identity erosion, really taking out every kind of building block that made up who I was. And there were things like intentional sleep deprivation. There were things like triangulation. There were always other people involved to make sure that I would know that I would never be good enough, the cheating, the lying. There were drugs involved. I got spiked over an extended period of time, but I didn't know, because you obviously don't really think that the person who's closest to you would do something like that to you, which then obviously would make his mission easier. And there was so much happening, but when you're in it, you don't realize what's happening. You just know that all of a sudden nothing makes sense anymore, and you feel like a drug addict because you just can't seem to leave. You feel like you're losing your mind. So it's a really, really horrible place to be.
Well, Rania, stay there, because I'm going to bring in Lucy Barrison, psychotherapist. Now, Rania talked about triangulation. What is that exactly? What was?
Well, in this context, it's about having other people who are reinforcing the narcissist's perspective, which undermines your sense of self and your sense of reality, because there is this other gang, whether it's their family members, maybe some colleagues they've brought on side, and they will often say, oh, but so-and-so says this about you. So there's this apparent sense of corroboration that you're the bad person, you're the failure, or you're the inadequate one, while the narcissist, who, I mean, I think people really need to understand there are 4 main pillars of narcissism, although Ronnie has identified a couple of other ones, which I'll come on to in a minute. But the main 4 are a sense of entitlement or grandiosity, that somehow they're in control and they're very important. A lot of cruelty or callous behaviour, which can either be physical or it could be verbal, it could be emotional, psychological. A sense of anger or a lot of impulsive behaviour that comes across as very aggressive, and also manipulation. But Ronnie also mentioned things like love bombing, this idea that at the very beginning, this person makes you feel so incredibly seen and heard and validated, which is fundamentally what we're all after in our intimate relationships. But you get it right at the beginning, and then gradually something chips away, but you're already hooked in, you're sucked in. And the other thing that Ronnie talked about was drug use. You often find there's either drug use, which again is quite entitled behaviour, or quite a lot of sexual use. So that could be porn, going to spanking parties, using prostitutes. So that whole constellation of behaviour often only materialises further down the line, but you're already in that relationship. And when people say, why don't you leave? This must be just so obvious as to why it's such a toxic, unhealthy relationship. You're already in, you're already sucked in. And there's a lot of kind of come and go behaviour. I'll love you, and now I'm going to diminish you. Ronnie used that word diminishment. It's really key, because you're up there on the pedestal and then they cut you down, put you back, cut you down. It's absolutely exhausting.
God, Ronnie, how did you get out of that, though? I mean, because that sounds like, as you said, you left.
I just got to a point where I realised that if I stayed another 4 weeks, I wouldn't be alive. And it was literally survival instinct that kicked in, and it was that last energy that, got me onto that plane, and I lost everything back then, my job and my house, my friends, my health, myself. And it was really starting from scratch. And that's how I got out. I just knew I had to. And I just wanted to add something to the back and forth. What we also need to keep in mind is when we keep telling people, why don't you just get out? There's a lot of chemical reactions happening in the brain that actually run in the background, which also make it impossible to just walk out, because you're hooked in that situation, right?
I'm wondering, Lucy, was what Ronnie says there, are narcissists born or are they made? Like, because you can be born with that kind of mindset, I presume, or does it your surroundings?
The jury is still out as to whether we are the product of nurture or nature. I mean, I think that there's so much research either way. And there is an argument that says that narcissists develop in those early kind of 6 months in terms of how other people connect with them and relate to them. And what we do know is that quite a lot of narcissistic behaviour is actually just a more florid version of what very many of us have in terms of, perhaps feeling very insecure and compensating for that by being cruel to other people. Many of us will, maybe of our viewers will be watching and thinking, no, that's never me. But actually, we're all prone to maybe more animalistic behaviour, but a narcissist just has this in much more florid abundance.
Because people throw out that term as if, so-and-so's a narcissist, so-and-so's a narcissist. And I think if you've ever been in a situation with somebody who is narcissistic, then you fully understand.
You really know.
You can really appreciate what it is. And if somebody ever says that to me, I think, no, I'm not a narcissist. I've seen it. I know what it is, and it's quite unpleasant.
And that's why I say it's all of those pillars, because we can often be in a relationship with someone who's very angry. They have unresolved anger issues. Or we might be in a relationship with someone, and I'm so glad you said, it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. It could be a family member, it could be a colleague, it could be just one of your friendship group. Someone may have a friend in the group who's incredibly manipulative, or they may be very insecure and they're very, in a way, quite bullying. They're very condescending because they're covering up their own inadequacies. But what you really need is the whole picture. All of that brought to bear in one individual, and the way they just grind the other person down for their own gratification.
It's terrible, isn't it? Really terrible. Now, Ronya talks of her story. Ronya, you, out of that story, became an abuse recovery coach.
Yes.
What would you say is the one thing that you learned about yourself through your experience?
Well, when we experience a situation like that, it basically comes down to what was it that appealed to me that I walked into that trap. And that's once we started exploring that, because clearly the narcissist had a carrot, right, dangling in front of my nose. And I was so desperate to have it. And consciously, I didn't even know I was, because I was confident and successful and all of that. But clearly, he had something. And that's the most insightful gift, really, that we get out of a situation like that, because it really brings us to our knees. And it forces us to look really deep, and we need to sort it out if we want to get on the other side. But once we do, and we do our healing work, it's the most liberating thing that anybody could ever do. So it was basically, very insightful. It was very liberating. I learned a lot about myself, faulty and outdated programs that I had running in the background that made me susceptible to situations like that. And what we all want is, if we've been in a situation like that, whether it's in the workplace or in a relationship, it doesn't matter. We don't want to repeat it again, right?
Well, that's
and
it,
that's
isn't
why
it?
it's important to actually look at ourselves and then take the lessons, learn the tools, get the guidance, ask for help, because that's actually okay to do.
Can I just say one thing, which I found very interesting, when Ronnie said that she lost everything. She had to get on that plane, lost her house, lost her job, but actually, and it's going to sound super cheesy when I say it like this, but you got yourself back. And that's the biggest gift. And if anybody is in the same position right now, the chance of getting your life back is the most phenomenal motivator.
Well, listen, guys, we're running out of time.
Of you, right? Because you're not going back to
Ronnie,
where
we're running
you
out of
were.
time.
You're like...
We're running out of time, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. But I'm going to give the final word to Lucy Beresford. Lucy, a word to somebody who may find themselves drawn, because people think you get drawn back to the narcissist every time, or once you've experienced it, you might end up going and doing the same thing. We've got about 30 seconds. What would you say to people?
I'd say that if you get into one relationship first, then you will have done it unconsciously. But as Ronnie said, if you start to do the work on yourself, you'll be much more conscious about your own motivation and the things, the pitfalls that you're drawn to, and you'll be less likely to go into a narcissistic relationship in the future.
Eyes wide open, that's what it is. Lucy Beresford, thank you very much, and also Ronnie Fraser, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. So that is narcissism. If you were confused, are you with a narcissist? Well, hopefully that's helped. Now, listen, on the way, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? Let's get an update, though, with your weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We've got a fine evening to come. It does turn quite chilly overnight, but then for most it'll be another sunny day on Sunday. So looking at the bigger picture, and high pressure sits firmly in place just to the north of the UK, keeping it dry and settled, though the positioning still means we've got a northeasterly breeze, so some northern and eastern coasts continuing to stay chilly and quite cloudy at times over the next few days. Fine end to the day, some sunshine before dusk, and then overnight will generally stay dry with clear spells, though notice the cloud thickening across northeast Scotland, down eastern parts of England, pushing into central England later on in the night. Temperatures generally dipping into single figures, 1 or 2 spots could be on the chilly side to start Sunday morning. Plenty of sunshine, particularly in the west. Further east, we do have that low cloud first thing, but it should lift and break and push back towards the coasts. Eastern coast of Scotland, northern Scotland and eastern England will see cloudier skies through Sunday at times, but I'm hopeful there'll be some brighter breaks. Chilly here, temperatures 13, 14 degrees, but inland in that sunshine, temperatures rising low to possibly mid-20s in the best of the sunshine. UV levels remain high to very high. Into the evening time and overnight, we see that low cloud start to return off the North Sea once more, this time thicker and possibly expanding further south and westwards as we move through the night. Clearer skies in the west, but even under the cloud, temperatures dipping into single figures. So it means a bit of a westy split to start the new working week. Sunshine across western parts of the UK, cloudy in the east. And then, just like we saw last week, this cloud will take its time to burn back through the day, but it eventually will do, allowing some sunny spells. Over the next few days, it remains very similar. Further sunshine, temperatures in the 20s.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 26 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. Remember, you can stream the show live on YouTube and catch up with everything on our GB News app. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it's time for our great British debate. And this hour, I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? A group of Conservative MPs are demanding that the government abolish inheritance tax in the autumn statement later this year. The Conservative Growth Group, led by allies of Prime Minister Liz Truss, will this month publish a paper justifying why parents should have the freedom to pass their wealth onto their children without sacrificing the savings to the state. Now, 55 Tories behind the campaign believe a move like this could prove a much-needed boost in support for the Conservatives, who are still lagging behind Labour in the polls by double digits. Would Rishi Sunak getting rid of an inheritance tax be just what the Tories need to win your vote for the next general election? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? So to debate this, I'm joined by Reem Ibrahim, media officer at the IEA, Ryan Shorthouse, the founder of CEO of Bright Blue. Right, so let's see. Welcome. Are they there? Right, here we go. We've got just one of you there. Where's Reem? Where's Reem as well? Well, we'll start with you then, Ryan. Oh, there we go. Well, I can't see them both. I can usually see them both. Right, let's start with you then, Reem, seeing as you're up there now. Reem, talk to me. Would your parents leave you anything, do you think?
Well, I don't really have much to leave me, but let's talk about what inheritance tax actually is fundamentally. It's a death tax, and, you know, across our lives, we are always told, you know, that we have to pay a huge amount of tax. At the moment, we have the highest tax burden in 70 years. We've got income tax, corporation tax, VAT, all of this amalgamates to your less money in your pocket that's being taken by the state. And as soon as you're on your deathbed, you're now slapped with this other tax, the inheritance tax. And what that means is that it's effectively a tax on your death. Now, I think what we've got to remember is that there is nothing wrong inherently with individuals themselves being able to pass on their wealth to their children. I mean, I think that we should be able to pass on our wealth to our children. My grandparents came to this country from North Africa and they wanted a better life for their children. And so I think that we should be incentivizing people to do what's best for their children, not taking it away.
Ryan, what do you think? Talk to me about what is the deal with the inheritance tax then? What does it mean? How much are we taxed and at what threshold? Do you know all this?
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be scrapped, and I don't think it should be reduced. The main reason why is because the main people who would benefit from that are people over the age of 60 on average, and people who are very affluent. So where it kicks in from adult who is dying to their offspring, who tends to be over the age of 60, is over £1 million. So that's when inheritance tax is payable. Now, house prices have risen, but most people, on average, do not own properties above £1 million. So I just think, considering the weight of taxation is on working age people and work, if the Treasury is going to cut taxes, it should cut them on people who are striving to have a good life rather than people who have already got it. And therefore, the priority should be cutting income tax for particularly the lowest earners. And the other thing I would say about it, it's wrongly called a death tax. Somebody can't be taxed if they're dead. The tax is on the transaction to the person who's inheriting it, who's lucky enough to have inherited such money. They haven't earned that. It's an unearned thing. And there is taxation on most transactions. So we have to tax some things. That's the choice of government, to do public services, to fund public services. So I think it's completely disproportionately targeted to now think about cutting inheritance tax. It would benefit very, very wealthy people and very old people. That's not. I don't think that's quite true, actually. I mean, because you're saying very wealthy people, but if I read here that your estate is worth £500,000 and your tax-free threshold is £325,000, then what's happened is that tax threshold hasn't moved for quite some time, so it's encompassing a lot of people who aren't actually that wealthy. I think that's the problem with it. So you're talking about £1 million, but that's not what the figures say here. I'm reading the inheritance tax rates from the government's website. And that's what they're saying. So that would be... Sorry, was that... There's an allowance of £1 million that you're allowed to pass on to your children, your direct children.
Well, let's bring in... who have we got next? Dr Daniel Pitt. Let's bring in Dr Daniel Pitt. He's a teacher associate at the University of Sheffield. Daniel, is that right? I'd need to have $1 million before I'm then taxed my 40%. I didn't think that was right. I thought at $325,000, anything over it, then I start getting taxed on that. I thought that was it. He's saying $1 million.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would be in favour of scrapping inheritance tax. I think the principle itself is actually against conservative society, what conservatives should aim for. That the whole point of a conservative is to be able to take your cultural, your spiritual, and of course your property and hand it down to the next generation and continue to do so. We were taught that from Edmund Burke since 1790. It's a core conservative value. But my understanding is that you have 325,000, and then you have an allowance of 175,000 on top of that, which a personal allowance, which is what the Conservatives have introduced, the 175,000 bit. But of course, in the manifesto, I think there's a practical and a sort of promise-keeping aspect to this. Is that in the 2010 manifesto and the 2015 manifesto, the Conservatives pledged that they would raise it up to $1 million, and they haven't done that. It's stayed exactly the same since they've been governing since 2010. So there's a promise-keeping element. The Conservatives should, at very least, fix the thresholds.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So I'm going to come back to Ryan then. Ryan, you're wrong. It's not $1 million. It is 325,000. I was quite right about that. You said it's taxing really wealthy people. They're not really wealthy people. The average house price in the UK, I think, is a bit more than that, actually. So on average, when people die and they have to, if they've not, I think it's 7 years, you have to only if you give away more than $325,000 before 7 years before you die are you not taxed on it. Do you not think that it's a bit of a rip-off?
Well, I think we have a misunderstanding between what the allowance is, which I'm sure is about $1 million, but I may be wrong about that. But, you know, I'm happy to...
I'm just reading on the government website.
Okay. Well, I think there is an allowance for people who are children and what your parents can pass on to you. But I may be wrong about that. But no one's talking about banning inheritance tax. No one's talking about banning inheritance. We're just saying that the transaction to the lucky recipient should be taxed. And most transactions,
but it's not a transaction, is it? I mean, it's effectively money that has already been earned by those individuals, by those parents, potentially through income tax. They've already paid that tax. So inheritance tax is a double tax.
Let Reem finish. You said it's a double tax.
And you pay VAT on it. So double taxation happens every day.
No, but yeah, it might happen every day, but you're dead. And the thing is, you've already the thing that you've acquired, you've already paid tax on. So why should you then pay a tax when you die? It's the point. Reem, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say
let Reem finish.
Just because it is. So just because it is a double tax doesn't mean it's right. I mean, you're right. We have an incredibly complicated tax system, and I would like to see it simplified significantly. We've also got to remember that this isn't a tax on the super wealthy. The super wealthy don't pay these inheritance taxes. We've got to be clear about that.
That's right.
This tax falls on the middle classes, those that have eventually worked incredibly hard, and this is where the tax burden really does fall. Now, those
Reem, I'm going
to
have to interrupt you, Reem, because we're running out of time, but I respect your point, and I think you've made it well. Thank you very much, Reem Ibrahim, Media Officer at the IEA, Ryan Shorthouse, founder and CEO of Bright Blue, and Dr. Daniel Pitt. He's a teaching associate at the University of Sheffield. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We'll continue with this great British debate, and I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's.
We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Rishi Sunak scrap inheritance tax? A group of Conservative MPs are demanding that the government abolish inheritance tax in the autumn statement later this year. The Conservative Growth Group, led by allies of the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, will this month publish a paper justifying why parents should have the freedom to pass their wealth onto their children. Seems perfectly reasonable without having to sacrifice their savings to the state. Why on earth do you have to do that? You've paid tax once on it. Why should you pay tax again? Now, the 55 Tories behind the campaign believe a move like this could provide much-needed support for the Conservatives. They don't actually generate that much money in revenue from inheritance tax in any case. Obviously, the Conservatives are falling behind the Labour Party in double digits in the polls. So what do you think? Should Rishi Sunak get rid of the tax just to help the Tories win the next general election? Seems to make sense to me, but what about you? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also political commentator Sam Dowler. I'm going to start with you, Sam Dowler. Inheritance tax.
I think it's appalling. Look, my dad came from nothing. He came from a tiny little house in Catford. He worked his way up at Prudential Insurance. He made his money. He was a Cockney geezer. He spoke like this, all right, and sent me to private school. He even sent me to elocution lessons.
It didn't work, darling.
Did it?
What on earth were you talking about?
Thank you, ladies. Anyway, so therefore he's paid his taxes, big, large taxes. He was he was in the highest bracket, and when he passed last year, obviously everything went to my mum and stuff, and so now you have this sort of cat and mouse game where where she's like, oh, you can give a certain amount to your kids each year. That is, there are people, accountants that make, that their entire job is to shift money around and to stop the government from taking so much money from you, from your folks who have earned it fair and square. So I think, obviously this is a winning tactic for the Tories. I mean, I would, whether they are doing it to stay in power or whether they think it's a good idea, I say it's a winner for everybody.
Lizzie Cundy.
Inheritance tax, let me tell you, it's an attack on the graveyard. It is. It's a double tax. You get taxed when you're, living, but not when you're dead. And we work hard for our families. I work hard and I want it to go to my boys.
Yeah.
And I think many people feel this. It's not fair. And I think the government have to do this, out of a sense of fairness and justice.
But I've been listening to some lunatic broadcasting corporations and some other... and I've been listening and I hear people saying, but it's only right, it's not fair that people should be able to have that. And then almost as if they think that, well, you've worked really hard, but you should really share it now to everybody and it's fine to... And I think that's totally wrong.
Well, we're not in a communist country.
You've paid tax. But do you know what makes this worse is the probate situation as well. Because what happens is after 6 months of that probate, whatever that inheritance would be, you then have to pay the tax. And if you don't pay the tax on the money or the inheritance that you would get, then they start charging interest on the non-money that you have. And then when you do eventually get that money, which could take up to a year or more, it used to be quicker, your house price may have sunk a little further, your tax burden will still will be the amount you've paid in tax will be the interest, and you have to pay that. And you can't even say, well, look, HMRC, that's not right because I'm waiting for probate, which is a government thing. Why should I pay the tax? They won't wait for it. And it's a rip off. The whole thing.
One of my best pals last year. So my dad died, and then her mum was very ill, and she's an only child, and her granddad, he came over from Africa like many years ago and bought his house and stuff, and then he died, and then 6 months later her mum died. And so she's got 2 properties, and like she's trying to manage it, and she had probate and then probate from her grandfather, and it's like a complete and utter nightmare. And it's like, it should be. Surely it's simple.
You don't understand why it takes so long.
Yeah, exactly.
But you work so hard to invest into your family.
Course.
It's morally right.
Well, it's a money grab, isn't it, really?
And look, the Inland Revenue claimed $6.1 billion from inheritance tax.
It's not that much.
And it isn't a great amount.
Drop in the ocean.
So, I really feel strongly about this. But to tax you when you're dead, and you can't do anything about it because you're dead, you're pushing up the daisies, you can't even appeal it.
Yeah. It's just, I just don't understand. In this country, we seem to have a situation where, hey, it's civil servants again, that everything takes so long. And in that, there is always collateral damage. And that collateral damage is not... They don't cater for the collateral damage. So whatever the outcome will be, they don't say, oh, well, look, because of this, and which is our fault in this system, it's no, you're going to pay the interest for that. There's no way, and there's no way you can complain about it, because, as you said, you're dead.
You're dead.
But it's the whole thing with the elderly care as well. It's like, you have a certain amount of money, but if you have to go into elderly care, they suck that money dry.
That's so wrong.
Until you have nothing.
That's so wrong.
And then you can use the state's money. I mean, after you pay taxes your whole life,
and you've been paying for other people as well, through your taxes as well.
But the wealthy, not necessarily the wealthy, but people aren't wanting to live in this country anymore.
Right.
We are being taxed to death, basically. We are being taxed and taxed since, the worst tax since, the Second World War. It's too much, and this really needs to go.
Well, in places like New Zealand, for example, they don't have that. They got rid of it. I think it's Switzerland as well. To me, it's a no-brainer. The Conservative Party did that, because not only that, but they've kept the threshold at which inheritance tax kicks in at the same place for many years. So that means that more people fall into the bracket as house prices come up.
Of course.
And, of course, as house prices rise, obviously more people fall into the bracket, and it's the middle England. So it's not... and middle United Kingdom, actually. So it's not, as was said, £1 million, which is wrong. It's not the wealthy people. The wealthy people know the rules, and it's not a tax on cash, actually. It's a tax on wealth. And as I understood it, the love of money is the root of all evil, but the creation of wealth is good.
Well, I love that. I love that.
That's the point.
Look, we work hard all our lives. We're paying, mortgages with high interest rates. Come on.
It's just absurd.
It's unfair and unjust.
Well, like you said, it's absurd. You've accrued a certain amount of wealth and paid high taxes to get to that amount, and then you can't even pass that down to your children without having to pay another 40%. Was it 40% or something?
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
And you can help your children. So people say, but it's what his point about old people was. The old people. It's not, because that thing that I've accrued will be for my children who will be young.
But you're keeping the money in the system.
And I'm keeping the money. Yeah, so they have it, and so they can give it to their kids. So actually, it is a tax on the people. But the money that I'm going to give to my kids will be for them, and they'll be young. Yes. They can pass to their kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sick and tired.
Why are they saying, they haven't worked for it? Why, they're just getting it? Hold on, this is what I work for. It's for my boys,
but also they will spend
family.
it. They will spend it and add to the economy as it is. So it's like it's like rather than it disappearing into the government's coffers, it stays within the people, and then therefore they spend it on local businesses, etc. So it's just.
But they've already paid. The other thing is they've already paid tax now. I don't see why you should pay tax twice. It makes me quite cross, and it's a quick win for the Conservative Party as well. But as ever, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices. Their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing today. Unfortunately, only 2 of you. I wanted more. You're probably all watching something else. Oh, hello. I've got Seshni and also Jonathan Jones. Let's start with Jonathan Jones of Tregotham Tea. Jonathan Jones, good to see you. So, Jonathan, what do you think?
Hi, Nana.
What are your thoughts on this?
You definitely bring down the tax or get rid of it. I think it's great news. I mean, this tax has been an easy hit on people being creative, and, the history of this country has always been because people created wealth and they did good things with it. You don't need the government to tell them what to do. The government spends way too much of our money already. So I'm all in favour of it. I think it would be a really good thing. And us tea drinkers out there all think, get rid of it, and let's all have a good cup of tea.
A good cup of tea, yeah. Thank you. And good tea it is, by the way. Don't forget you're supposed to be making this reishi tea for me. I'm still waiting for it, Jonathan. So I'm going to hold you to that.
Mushrooms for you.
Hey,
great
that's
to see you
great.
at Chelsea Flower Show. It's going to be a great cup of tea, Nana.
I'm looking forward to that. But as long as my name's on it, I'm happy. Right, let's ask Seshni. Seshni, what do you think? Death tax, does it need to go, or is it actually something that should stay?
Good afternoon, and I feel left out now without my tea. Yes, in answering your question, yes, I agree with what most of everyone has said. We should abolish the inheritance tax. It does seem like a double tax, which is unnecessary. And as everyone was explaining, it's about 40% of the inheritance. And I think the figures that were given was, as you said, 375,000 tax-free, and then again 125,000, which makes it 500, which is the majority of the population. So
a lot of people.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. Listen, Stephanie, always a pleasure. And Jonathan Jones, always a pleasure as well. Thank you so much. Those are my great British voices. Right, so that's what they think. What do you think? Yes. Well, a lot of people think it's a craziness. Why should we have to pay that? Right, well, let's move on to another story. Now, this one caught my eye this week. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has agreed to hand over all of his COVID WhatsApp messages to the COVID-19 inquiry, despite the government's announcement it would seek judicial review into the demand by the inquiry chair to full access of the messages sent from the minister's phones this time. However, should we even be bothering with this inquiry? That's what I'm asking. Legal experts say that it's going to last till at least 2027. Some say 2028. Let me ask my panel, what do you think? I mean, look, we mentioned it earlier.
Yeah. But I think people, are asking questions and they should be answered. I do think it should happen, but the fact is this inquiry is taking so long, and it should be totally reformed so it's done quickly and without biased people, But as I said, Nana, earlier, if it takes so long, we're going to be another 10 years down the road. No one's going to really care. They'll give up caring.
Should we bother, Sam?
Again, it's like so much red tape, so many these things, backwards and forwards. Civil servants, as you say, so many cooks, so much spoiled broth. I mean, it's just like, what is the point? And and I don't think it's a witch hunt against Boris.
I don't think it is at all.
It's just like things should be investigated, but the fact that it would take such a long time, and it's just like, oh.
And why is it taking so long here?
Boring.
Other countries do it so quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at
if it was that important, get it done. It's like we were saying before about the problem with immigration, and getting going through maybe 5% every week, whatever, or 5% in a year. I think it was. It's like, this is so important. Employ more people.
Get it done.
Get it done, because it's so important. You keep banging on about how important it is. Put some money into some more staff members.
Why can't they just get 30 staff members and go through those messages?
No, because but they can't do that, because Baroness Hallett has to look through it, because I don't want 30 unknown people looking through that. There'll be a leak, and then there'll be a big thing, and it'll be everywhere. Look, I'm sick of it. Right, well, listen, it's time for the quickfire quiz. Let's have some fun now. This is the part of the show where my panellists, I test their knowledge and yours on some of the big hit stories that hit the headlines. Joining me, broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, press your buzzer. And Sam Dowler, your buzzer, please. Please play along at home as well. Right, let's see. Question 1. A man in Hampshire has been arrested after he was suspected to have stolen what? Is it A, a baby donkey, B, a crate of traffic cones, or C, 2 police cars? I think that was Lizzie Cundy.
A baby donkey.
Baby donkey, Sam Dowler?
It was a baby donkey, because
I've seen it. Baby donkey is a baby donkey. You're right. It was a baby donkey. And the name of the donkey was Moon.
Moon. No. Floppy ears.
That's a good name, actually. If I have another child, I'll call it Moon.
Yeah.
Although that's not going to happen, as we know. I've gone through the menopause. You saw I did it on camera. Right, question 2. Jane McDonald has replaced Philip Schofield as the presenter of the annual British Soap Awards. But how many British Soap Awards has Philip Schofield previously presented? Closest answer wins. Sam Dowler.
15.
Lizzie Cundy?
12.
12. Let's see. The answer is 15. Absolutely, Sam Dowler. You get that at home? Too many. That was the answer.
Away as well.
That would have also worked.
It's too many
would have been a good answer as well. Right, question 3. Air New Zealand has come up with the new scheme to improve fuel efficiency. But what is it? Is it A, allowing more pets on flights, B, weighing passengers, or C, flying faster? Sam Dowler.
Weighing passengers.
I'll go for A then. pets?
Pets, it's weighing passengers, absolutely. Would either of you be happy to be weighed on a flight?
Oh,
Yes.
God, yeah, and I'll be quite happy to be weighed.
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like when they argue about you've gone 1 kilogram over, but like
You just don't like paying,
but then you're sat next to somebody who's 200 kilograms.
I think they should add it all in.
Yes,
Right,
it should all be factored in.
Question for true or false. A Ukrainian brewery has come up with a new Boris Johnson themed beer named Johnson UK. Lizzie Cundy. She said it's true. Let's see if she's right.
I think it's true as well.
True, isn't it? Yes, if you had a beer named after you, what would it be called?
Oh, Fizzy Lizzie?
Fizzy Lizzie, I like that. And Sam?
Dowler's Drips.
Dowler's Drips. Mine would just be called
Draft, I meant.
No, it would be called Boss. Right, question 5. This week
beer.
saw an announcement that this 83-year-old celebrity was expecting a child, but which celebrity is it? Is it A, Robert De Niro, B, Joe Pesci, or C, Al Pacino? Ooh, Lizzie Cundy.
A, it was Robert De Niro.
Is it Robert De Niro?
No, it's C, Al Pacino.
It's Al Pacino. No. It's Al Pacino.
It was Robert De Niro maybe a couple of months ago.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
No, it was actually.
And he's my friend, did you know that?
Is your
Of
friend?
course.
You know everybody.
Yeah.
Or an ex-friend.
Name
Did he
drop.
ghost you too?
Oh, yeah, good.
he did.
Right,
Don't
on
make it on me.
today's show, I've been asking, would you hand over your phone for a public inquiry? And according to our Twitter poll, 32% of you said yes, 68% of you say no. I say a huge thank you to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Thank you so much, Lizzie Cundy.
Lovely to see you. And
also political commentator Sam Dowler. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining me today. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. Now, listen, I will be back tomorrow at 3, and joining me tomorrow will be the fabulous Danny Kelly and also Christine Hamilton. We'll be discussing all the top stories of the day today. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app and find out all the things that are happening here on GB News, and of course follow all the shows live on Twitter and stream them on YouTube. God, that's so much to do. How many seconds have I got left?
You've got an early night.
Busy.
I'm going to have a nice early night tonight as well. I am actually. I've got nothing to do tonight. There's no kids. They've gone off somewhere else.
Ooh, binge a box
I might take you out with me then. Oh, really? Where are we going?
I won't say just in case you guys. Well, listen, I'll leave you with the latest weather forecast. Take care, enjoy yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, tune in at 3 o'clock. We'll be starting with a head-to-head, going head-to-head to meet some superstars and also my superstar panel, Danny Kelly and also Christine Hamilton. All right, enjoy the day, enjoy the weather. I don't know, I wonder what's happening with the football.
Oh, yes.
Right, who cares? I don't care. See you later. Bye.
Man City.
Good evening, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It does turn quite chilly tonight, but with high pressure in charge, we'll see plenty of sunshine through Sunday and temperatures climbing, particularly in the west. High pressure centre just to the north of us means the wind's still coming in from the northeast, so eastern coast a little bit chilly, but further west temperatures remaining above average for the time of year. So fine end to the day, we will see some low cloud across northeast Scotland and also eastern England feeding slowly back inland, making its way towards the Midlands during the early hours. But there'll be lots of dry weather around, clear skies in the west, and we could see a few shallow mist and fog patches and temperatures dipping into single figures. So yes, a chilly start to Sunday morning, but for many a sunny start. We do have low cloud, central and eastern parts. This slowly burns back towards the coast. I think eastern parts of Scotland, towards the east coast of England, could see some low cloud at times, and with that northeasterly breeze it will be quite chilly, temperatures struggling. Grimsby there 13 degrees, but come further west temperatures rising into the low 20s. Locally 25 degrees is possible, say for parts of West Wales. Into the evening time, plenty of dry weather to come, maybe an isolated shower across Scotland, but most places dry. And then overnight we see the low cloud pushing back in from the North Sea, thicker and lower, and this could just produce a few spots of drizzle, though western areas staying dry and clear once more, and temperatures again into single figures. So a bit of a westy split to start Monday morning. Sunny skies towards Northern Ireland, Scotland, West Wales, the West Country, elsewhere quite cloudy, but again the cloud through the day should lift and break and slowly retreat towards the coast. It might take its time, and temperatures rising to the mid-20s in the west. And Tuesday and Wednesday staying very similar, further sunshine and higher temperatures.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome to Neil Oliver Live with me, Simon Evans, standing in for Neil this week while he takes